Hello everybody and welcome back to how I would have remade the DCEU, and I'm going to go ahead and just assume you've seen the first 4 phases and understand that this is a retooling of the existing DCEU, or at least the was existing DCEU. And if you haven't seen phases 1 through 4 or the entire first saga, there's a link in the description or up in the cards up here, so wherever it is, go ahead and click that if you haven't seen that already. But other than that, let's go and get going with phase 5. The passing of torches. So in 2030, we're going to get going with The Better Tomorrow. And this is going to be both Superman 4 and Supergirl 2. We're going to open with a young, depressed girl standing on the ledge of a tall building. And she's alone. No one is waiting for her at the ground. That is until a gentle voice speaks next to her. Superman. He talks and listens to her for a few minutes, never talking down to her. He never devalues her emotions or any of her feelings, and he helps her have a bright moment in a very dark day. After making sure the girl is safely on the ground, he hands her off to the right people, and Clark Kent meets with then his cousin, Kara Zor-El. And he has been showing her around Earth, introducing her to the world that had adopted him and his family that he had and her had helped save during the war against Darkseid. This family being his wife Lois Lane, his child John Kent, and his mother Martha Kent. While making some dinner with the Kents, Clark suddenly collapses. After taking him to a doctor, it is revealed that his brain had developed growths. If the doctors were even able to operate on him, there wouldn't be enough of his brain left to have a quality life. And this is reconfirmed with a meeting with the Justice League and their physicians who were more aware of his Kryptonian biology. And it is theorized by the League that due to his coma at the end of Superman 3 with his battle against Lex Luthor, then of course his death against Doomsday, the Mother Box revival, the anti-life equation being put on, and then the life equation being put on him, in such a short time span, this causes his brain to basically go haywire and start growing tumors. So Clark Kent, Kal-El, Superman will die soon. We would then meet through flashbacks a young Manchester Black, a then child inspired by the heroics of Earth's defenders, especially Superman, though due to his rough childhood, he has developed less than moral tendencies and ethics and how he helps people. With the aid of his metagene granting him telepathy and telekinesis, he sets out with his team, the Elite, made up of members Coldcast, Menagerie, and Hat. The movie would continue with Manchester Black and the Elite looking to ruin Superman's legacy after Superman makes a public announcement about how the Elite are not affiliated with him nor the League due to their unnecessarily violent tendencies, and Kara would have her arc in this movie be about letting go of Kal and finding a new purpose in her life, which would eventually be following in Kal-El's footsteps and defend Earth as the next Kryptonian defender of Earth. And so by the end of this movie, Superman's legacy is defended against Manchester Black, and Kara succeeds Kal as the new Kryptonian defender of Earth. And the world looks onto a future without Superman. There is going to be a post-credit scene, and that Clark had allowed his body to be studied by scientists, and they start looking for a possibility to clone him. This would lead down the line to a version of Bizarro. Next up is Batman Broken. Things are relatively back to normal after the events of the Darkseid War for Batman and Robin, Tim Drake. Though after a routine night of patrol and Jim Gordon's retirement ceremony, Bruce and Tim return to the Batcave and Talia al Ghul is waiting for them. She has brought someone here with her, a child named Damian. She claims that Damian is Bruce's child and has been sent off to be trained by Batman. So the Al Ghul's plan in this entire movie is to have Damian eventually replace Bruce Wayne as Batman, so the symbol of Batman is under control of the Al Ghul's. Bruce notices that, on a side note, that Venom has reappeared on the streets after a noticeable dip in usage by the junkies, and it has reappeared in a way of a new player in Gotham's game of crime. Bane. And I'm going to take some inspiration from The Dark Knight Rises for Bane, just a little bit. So the inspiration that I'm taking is that Bane would have been trained by the League of Assassins, just like Batman, and his purpose is that he was a weapon that would eventually kill Batman. This would then allow Damian to take up the cape and cowl as the next Batman, under Ra's al Ghul's influence. But Bane goes AWOL, and So I'm also going to mention here, this was aided by the Court of Owls, who tried to do their version of this same plan in a later Batman project. So I wanted to at least plant that seed here. It's not going to be revealed in this movie, but that is the subtext to how Bane goes AWOL and escapes. So the Court of Owls are a mystery player in this game. Now the Al Ghouls are looking to expedite their plan for Batman's heir before Batman is possibly killed by Bane, and this nearly happens by the end of the movie. Batman's back is shattered against Bane's knee, paralyzing Batman/Bruce from the waist down. Bane is eventually defeated by the Bat family: Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Damian Wayne, Tim Drake, Alfred, and Barbara Gordon. And I want to have it known, Bruce Wayne is permanently disabled by Bane. When coming up with ideas for Phase 5, my hypothetical was, what happens to the Trinity? And I will just say right now, I wanted to come up with a different answer for each member: Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Superman, I thought All-Star Superman would be a perfect ending for him. For Batman, I figured he's going to go as long as he physically can. In the Batman Beyond series, the reason he stops being Batman is because a normal thug had gotten the jump on him and Bruce Wayne had to resort to a gun. The moment he had to resort to a gun, he's like, it's over. And that was because of his age. So in my hypothetical, Ben Affleck would have been playing the character for about 15 years. And I wanted to play with the thought of, what if Ben Affleck wanted to retire the character? What is the best way to write Batman out, so to speak? So permanently disabling, I felt like, was the best way without having to resort to killing the character. There is a post-credit scene for Batman Broken, and that is Bane in Arkham Asylum will be later killed by Ra's al Ghul/Ra's al Ghul's minions for ruining his plans. So Bane is gone. Next up is Wonder Woman Majesty. An ancient power has been released the moment Darkseid was vaporized by the Justice League and Company, the daughter of an Amazon, Myrina, and new god himself, Darkseid, Grail. Her parentage came from that fact that her mother hated Darkseid so much that she had a child with him in hopes that her child would be powerful enough to defeat him. She was also raised on the belief that the Amazons were making a mistake in hiding themselves and not being present in the world of man. Though when Darkseid heard of Grail's existence, he had her imprisoned, and now that Darkseid's gone, she has been freed and intends to finish her mother's vision in revealing/sharing the location of Themyscira with the rest of the world. This is not dissimilar to the entrance style of Hela in Thor Ragnarok, with Odin dying and then Hela showing up. It's a very similar process here. After the war against Darkseid is completed, Diana officially returns to Themyscira for the first time to attend her mother Hippolyta's funeral. Remember, Hippolyta was killed by Steppenwolf in Justice League Apocalypse/Justice League 3, my version of Infinity War. Since the Amazons are nearly immortal, an heir wasn't prepared, and as the only living descendant of Hippolyta, Diana is supposed to be the queen of the Amazons, though she's unsure if she is the best candidate. This is about when we have the first meeting between Diana and Grail, and this is going to be a very similar dynamic between these two characters as it was with the T'Challa and Killmonger in the first Black Panther movie, where Grail's vision isn't wrong, it's her methods in realizing that vision. Later in the movie, we'll actually also see Wonder Woman save a teenage Amazon, or at least by our normal human appearances and maturity standards, this is a teenager named Donna from a dangerous fire made by Grail. And this is going to be Donna Troy, another young Amazon, not unlike how Diana used to be when she was younger. Wonder Woman would have to kill Grail by using her own scythe. I hope I pronounced that weapon correctly. That was another quote-unquote god killer, like what she believed her sword to be in Wonder Woman 1/World War I, but also was/who she ends up being. The resolution of this movie is that Diana would retire as a superhero in the world of man and become the new queen and leader of the Amazons, and focus all of her attention on her new queenly duties. And then she would then ask Donna in private if she would be interested in following her footsteps as an Amazonian hero in the world of man. Donna agrees and sets off for her future. In the post-credit scenes, Diana didn't leave Donna with nothing to go on when she approaches the world of man either. She left an address and a name of a group to join: the Teen Titans. Now, starting in 2031, Flash 4. And I also want to make it known, the possible title Flash Forward did go across my brain many times. I didn't go with it. I just want to let you know that the thought was there. Wally isn't dead. The line from Hal Jordan burns in the mind of Barry Allen. Barry would be paranoid and restless at the thought of his partner, friend, and family still alive somehow after all this time. Barry would be spending his days researching the Speed Force and going back in time, rewatching Wally's death over and over like it were game film. Iris and Bart, who's now about 8 years old, are also grieving Wally's death and contemplating Hal's message. Ultimately, Barry's family tries to help him move on from his paranoia and from Wally. I'll also have it be known right here that this movie isn't going to be like your normal superhero movie. It's going to be more person versus self rather than person versus person. And so this would be similar to how in like the 2023 Flash movie that we had was Ezra Miller. Regardless of what your opinion was of that movie, there's not going to be a super present villain throughout the majority of this movie. It's just going to be Barry struggling with his obsession, his deteriorating mental health. And it's that much more apparent when you realize and remember that it's because of Barry that Wally is even a speedster to begin with from Flash 2 with the events with Mirror Master. The climax of the movie would be Barry sees that Wally had somehow gone so fast during the battle against Darkseid and Justice League Apocalypse that he went beyond time travel. It is literally inside the Speed Force itself. Barry then grapples with this thought before eventually, and after counsel with other Justice Leaguers, say a paralyzed Bruce Wayne, going into the Speed Force itself. Here, time works very differently, and Wally seems to not have aged a day. But he is anything but calm. He is being chased by a silhouette. This is the Black Racer. Barry would eventually sacrifice himself to the Black Racer to save Wally. And the finale would take a cue from Avengers Endgame with a final message written by Barry to his family, Wally, Iris, again, Bart, and his now newborn daughter, Nora. He talks about how much he has learned from being a Flash husband and father, and that he will always love his family now and forever. In the post-credit scenes, Wally notices that Bart had begun showing signs of being a speedster and decides to try to start training him, and also introduces him to the idea of the Teen Titans. Next up, Mr. Miracle. This is going to be a movie focusing on Scott Free and Big Barda settling in on Earth, as well as showing off their younger years in the orphanage with Granny Goodness. Scott's first job was working with an accomplished escape artist, Thaddeus Brown, whose stage name was Mr. Miracle. Brown, though, is later murdered, and Scott assumes the name of Mr. Miracle to honor his friend. And when Brown dies, Martian Manhunter comes to help Barda and Scott through their loss. This is when we learn more about the main villain, Dr. Destiny, or John D. He suffers from nightmares of the Unity and the suicide of his mother and seeks a power to help him control these fears. He studies the past recordings of heroes and villains on Earth and learns of a story in 1984 involving Wonder Woman and a con man, Maxwell Lord. Apparently, Lord had absorbed the power of an item called the Dreamstone, and that granted people their deepest wishes. This became Dee's big prize, and guesses since Lord had renounced his wish 47 years ago, then the Dreamstone should have reformed and be available to use. Dee eventually finds the Dreamstone and makes the wish that eventually grants him reality-altering and dream-manipulating powers. Though, like with Cheetah and with anybody who made a wish with that back in Wonder Woman 84, it takes their most valuable traits, in this case, John Dee's morality. This is where the crimes by Destiny grow, and Scott, Barda, and Jean try to put out the fires, so to speak, and stop Destiny. Destiny eventually traps Scott, Barda, and Jean in a false reality where they have everything that they ever wanted, though Destiny is also absorbing their life force while this happens. Scott is the one to eventually free himself from this mental prison by realizing that the Barda that he was talking to wasn't actually acting the way that she normally does, and using the real Barda as his anchor to reality, comes back and gets the leg up on Destiny, freeing Barda and Jean in the process, and the three destroy Dr. Destiny and also then the Dreamstone, once and for all. This is going to be an intended limited series that will be literally the show from 2019, Swamp Thing. This will be intended to be, like I said, a limited series. This was a show that was supposed to get season after season, but it was canceled after the first. I'm just going to say right now, obviously, there's some casting problems because Manda Xanadu does appear in this series, though it's not Naomi Harris. Again, this is taking place in my universe in 2031. I'm not going to predict who's going to be a big name in 2031 to play a lot of these characters. So take it very loosely that I will be taking the plot from this Swamp Thing show, intending it to be a limited series, so it's going to be a bit more conclusive. It's not going to leave you on a cliffhanger. It's going to be exactly what it should be. And I will also note that in the post-credits, Xanadu talks to Alec Holland / Swamp Thing about possibly teaming up with other quote-unquote friends, referring, of course, to the Justice League Dark. And now to open up 2032, I have my first show. Now, I just did say that Swamp Thing was going to be a limited series, but this is going to be a different type of show than I've done in the past. This is going to be an intended season after season show for the Bat Family. This will be the only exception with the Bat Family show, where this first season will be probably about an 8 to 10 episode count, a very streamlined story. All later seasons will be intended to be like 20 episodes, have filler, be able to show off more villains in Batman's Rogues Gallery, because there's just so many to choose from. Now we can really focus on using a lot of those other great villains. Again, this season is going to be the exception. It's going to be like a long movie because the story is going to be the battle for the cowl. After Bruce is forcibly retired as Batman, there is a power struggle within Gotham, and the Bat Family try to preserve and continue the legacy of the Batman. All players are fighting for either to become the next Batman or to stay far away from that dark persona, but are pulled in anyways to help protect it. The main players in this quote-unquote battle for the cowl are Jason Todd and Damian Wayne, who want to abuse the power and persona of the Batman for their own personal agendas. Again, Jason is very verbatim what I just said. Damian is doing this for the name of the Al Ghouls. There's also the Talon from the Court of Owls, who wants to have the symbol of Batman under the court's control. Then you have Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, who are really out to protect the symbol of Batman. Dick, however, understands that he shouldn't be the one to take over as Batman. He will have an episode or two where he has preemptively taken a suit and had gone out on patrol to try to preserve the image of the Batman, though he 100% hates it. At about a mid-season finale, Ra's and Talia al Ghul would both die, and Damian would struggle with his purpose now that they are gone. With some words of wisdom from Bruce, and as well as Jason Todd, he would later agree to become the next Robin, and without any ill intentions. The penultimate episode would also see Talon kill Alfred after a raid in Wayne Manor gone wrong. After Jason and Damian had put their egos and desires aside, they join Dick and Tim as the four Robins defend their home against the Court of Owls. By the end of the show, Tim will have earned the trust of his family and become the next to don the cape and cowl, while taking Bruce's own son Damian to be his Robin, finally putting an end to the Court of Owls. In the post-credit scenes, Tim is working with Bruce on designing his own suit. This would take inspiration from Terry McGinnis's Batman Beyond, with a black and red color scheme, but keeping with the classic Batman gear. So it's going to be kind of like this missing link between the original Batman suit and a more sleek Batman Beyond suit. To close out 2032, I have Dr. Fate. The ancient Lords of Order are in a cyclical battle against chaos. One of the many tools in their toolbox is imbuing humans with powers and abilities. One of these cases is a man whose background is shrouded in mystery and will be later known as the Gray Man. He has been imbued with the ability to tap into ambient dream energy of people who are on the brink of death. In the 1920s, Kent Nelson and his father Sven are archaeologists exploring ancient Mesopotamia, and on their dig they discover a chamber of an ancient god, Nabu. Among the trinkets, treasure, and items in the chamber is a golden helmet and an Ankh/amulet. Kent reaches out for the helmet, and once he touches the helmet, it fuses with him and a gas then spills into the chamber, unfortunately killing his father. Over the next section of the movie, Kent will learn how the history and the power of being with the god Nabu and Dr. Fate, kind of taking a page from the Moon Knight show in Marvel. He would also then have run-ins with the Gray Man, who is making an army of Gray Men with his abilities. Now, although the Lords of Order intended the abilities for the Gray Man to be an honor and a blessing, he has taken it as a curse. He has begun to experience the world muted of all sensations. He's only seeing in shades of gray. He's unable to hear the beauty in music. The Gray Man is eventually defeated by Dr. Fate when they meet with the Lords of Order, and the Lords explain their intentions of the abilities to be an honor and a blessing rather than a punishment. The Gray Man begs the Lords to strip him of this power. The Lords are willing to grant this wish, though it would also take his own life in the process. He agrees. Kent then returns to the university where he works and tries to move on with his life as both an archaeologist and a superhero. And in the post-credits scene, Kent discovers Felix Faust and ends up getting sucked into his own amulet. This keeps him in a suspended animation until he is eventually released. And now the last year of Phase 5, 2033, Green Arrow and Black Canary. This is going to be a story similar in format to the first Deadpool, where our main heroes are going to start out as experienced characters, and then we get told their story through flashbacks. And the movie would start by seeing Green Arrow and Black Canary working on patrol early in their crime-fighting careers, and then running into each other, recognizing and immediately embracing each other. Oliver has been back for a little bit, not a whole lot, so Dinah, of course, knew that he was back. Obviously, Oliver had no idea that Dinah had been out as the Black Canary. While on a date, the couple exchanged their stories over the past couple of years. And we also learned what happens to Oliver when he was missing. So Dinah would already know this, but for the sake of the audience, the story with Oliver in this version is that he went missing before the Unity. While out on that island, the Unity is formed and everyone, including himself, perishes. Though, because of the sacrifice of Hal Jordan and Sinestro with Entity, they are revived. And with this revival, it causes a worldwide sense of community to form. So there are extra boats out potentially looking for missing people, and coincidentally, this helps out Oliver get found. On Dinah's side of things, she was born of the metagene that allowed her to do her canary cry, and her mother was a non-powered vigilante as well. Dinah wanted nothing to do with following in her mother's footsteps. That is until after Oliver went missing and the Unity was formed and everyone was revived. With that extra sense of community, she wanted to help out with also the extra level of chaos that was coming with the revival. So she then takes up her mother's name of Black Canary and uses her canary cry to help make the world a better place. Continuing with Oliver's story, when he came back after learning how to use the bow and arrow for a little bit while on the island, he is then trained by his friend's father, Arthur King, who was in a circus, was an archer in that circus dubbed the Magician, who did a lot of trick shots. While on their way out of the restaurants, all caught up on our backstories, Oliver gets pickpocketed by a young teenager, Roy Harper. Over the movie, we also learned Roy's past, where he was adopted by a Navajo tribe after his father was killed trying to save the reservation. This is from the villain known as Merlin. While under the care of the Navajo tribe, he was trained in combat and how to protect himself, though the tribe was then killed and he is now alone. Oliver and Dinah then offer him a place to stay, although temporarily, but this eventually becomes permanent and they take Roy in as a adopted son. The movie would then progress as Oliver, Dinah, and Roy, who is dubbed Speedy, meet a shady character, a female by the name of Shiva, who is trying to help destroy the remainder of the League of Assassins. She'd be handled in this movie similarly to Cable in Deadpool 2, where she'll be the opponent for the heroes and main kind of present villain through the first part of the movie until the main villain is revealed later. And eventually the team learned from Shiva, an eyewitness, Roy, and that Oliver's trainer, Arthur King, is Merlin, a mercenary trained by the League of Assassins after his circus went down, and the culprit behind Roy's family's death. The three then would go into the climax, which would result in Merlin's death by the hands of Lady Shiva. In the post-credit scenes, we get that Lady Shiva talks to her daughter, Cassandra Cain, that there is another member of the League of Assassins out in Gotham, the Robin, Damian Wayne. Next up is another show similar to Bat Family. This is going to be The Green Lantern Corps Inheritance, Season 1. It would be inspired by various cop dramas like NCIS, Criminal Minds, CSI, The Rookie, while continuing the stories of the Green Lantern Zavoa. This would be a show that would get somewhere in the range of about 20 episode seasons at about 45-minute episodes, would have some filler episodes here and there spread around with a connected story that'll build into a grand finale for each season, focusing on different aspects of being a lantern. This season would focus on the inheritance of the rings and the pressure on the rookies to succeed. Jon Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kilowog would be the three returning Green Lanterns, with Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, and Jessica Cruz being introduced alongside other alien Green Lanterns. The show's first couple of episodes would focus more on setting up these new heroes when new evil presents itself, Volthoom. The season's primary story would be against Volthoom, who the Guardians had him be their first attempt at a lantern officer. It's before the idea of lanterns only getting one aspect of the emotional spectrum, and Volthoom had been given all emotions, like a White Lantern, though completely unhinged with his power unchecked. The Green Lanterns must employ the help of the Blue Lantern Corps of Hope, led by Saint Walker, as well as the Indigo Tribes of Compassion, to be able to defeat Volthoom. And to close out Phase 5, Justice League Dark, Forever Evil. In ancient times, all was good in the world, and as there was no evil, corruption, or war. To test humanity's morality, Zeus gave humans Pandora's box, a box that possibly contained everything you desire if you were to open it, though Zeus forbade humanity to do so. A man by the eventual name of Felix Faust was the buzzkill for humanity and opened it due to curiosity. This unleashes a being Blight, as well as the 7 deadly sins, the exact same ones we see in the first Shazam movie. Faust, over the years, afraid of Blight, had started gathering as much power as he could. He would con the greatest mystical minds and would continually offer up others' souls in place of his own to save his own skin. This would repeat over thousands of years until the leader of Kor, which is an ancient African city, the leader Nomo, had him banished to another plane of existence. Fast forward to the present day, wannabe magician and madman Deccan Drash, I hope I said that right, stumbles on the connection between the dimensions and sets Faust free. Faust then possesses Drash's body. It also be noted that when Faust returns, he is much weaker than when he was banished. When Faust continues his mission to defeat Blight, he kidnaps souls again to start growing his power, though this gets the attention of Madame Xanadu, and she then tries to gather the JLD again. Here we get the montage of Constantine, Zatanna, Deadman, Raven, all getting rallied by Madame Xanadu and Shade the Changing Man. As the team goes into an old lair of Faust after one of his sacrifices, they notice that he had to make a quick getaway, leaving many of his trinkets. This is because Blight had caught up to him and he had to make a quick run for it. Among the trinkets was an Ankh. Constantine and Deadman investigate the Ankh and start fiddling with it. Upon doing so, this releases a man dressed out of time, Kent Nelson. Nelson instantly goes for the helmet and becomes Dr. Fate, and we get a fun fight between the JLD and Fate. Once they all realize they're on the same team, Kent fills him in on what Faust is and the danger he possesses, and the existence of Pandora's box and Blight. While this is all happening, they learn from a mixture of newscasts and Xanadu's visions that Faust had learned how to absorb the life force from plant life. This is when they piece together that Faust is looking to kill Blight. Though Blight being a metaphysical being and cannot be killed, their battle would simply just result in the Earth being destroyed. Xanadu looks to recruit another member who would take a new stake in this war, Swamp Thing. The climax begins with a battle between Faust and the JLD, which pretty much ends with a stalemate until Blight and the 7 deadly sins show up. Turns out, Blight couldn't just exist either. Like Faust, he needed to possess a body, this being the body of Chris Esperanza. I know we don't know who that is, but this is a surprise to Xanadu and her confidant, her mystery confidant, the Phantom Stranger. For those who don't know, the Phantom Stranger has multiple different versions of his origin. I am using the one where he is Judas from the story of Christ, who sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He is on a mission to redeem his soul and must aid humanity for 1,000 years for each piece of silver. So if you do the math, that is 30 total thousand years. Esperanza was a friend of the Phantom Stranger who wasn't resurrected correctly from the Unity, and so his conflicted soul was perfect for Blight to take control. The Phantom Stranger then takes Blight to the border of heaven with the rest of the Justice League Dark, and here the Phantom Stranger tries to get the Presence to intervene and defeat Blight, though he does not answer. Blight terrifyingly says that Chris chose him rather than the other way around, and that this is how all things should be. He then kills Faust right then and there, and we watch Faust's soul get sucked into hell. During the next phase of the battle, there is a moment when the Phantom Stranger as a guide, Raven as an empath, and Deadman with possession all connect their minds with their target, Chris/Blight. Here, the battle can end with Chris overcoming the power of Blight after the JLD weakens the spirit itself within Chris. Blight is then banished to the collective unconscious, and Blight's power will be spread so thin that it won't be able to affect anything or anyone else the same way again for at least a very long time. There is going to be a post-credit scene in this movie. The Justice League Dark returned to Faust's old lair where they found Dr. Fate, and among the notes, trinkets, and paraphernalia, there are stories of the spirits of God's wrath, the Spectre. Starting off Phase 6 in 2034 is Bat Family Season 2, The Brave and the Bold. This season will be the true start to the Bat Family in a new era, with Batman, now Tim Drake, in his mid-20s or so, and his Robin, Damian Wayne, in his mid-teens or so. And this season will run for about 15 to 20 or so episodes, and will be told in roughly 2 parts with a mid-season and full-season finale. The first part of the story will deal with Tim learning how to call the shots as the new Batman, and Damian learning to follow those orders from Tim rather than from his mother or grandfather, who are now both deceased, or his father, who is now paralyzed. See Phase 5 for more. They would be dealing with new fantastical foe for them to subdue. Poison Ivy going on a classic tirade about how humans need to clean up the earth and stand down for a new era of fauna. All the while, picking up from the Green Arrow and Black Canary's post-credit scene, Cassandra Cain is on her mission to kill the final member of the League of Assassins, Damian Wayne. All the while, there are various reports of medical supplies and banks being robbed, while record-breaking cold temperatures are reported in Gotham. This will, of course, be Mr. Freeze taking inspiration from the Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero animated movie. Freeze will also be seen helping people who are unrelated to his quest for his wife's revival, showcasing his good side. There would be a fun, almost spy versus spy levels of stalking between Cassandra and Damian, and Tim would periodically be looking through past records of Bruce's time as the Cape Crusader to see how he had dealt with more fantastical villains, only finding reports of a hulking zombie that cannot die and is out of the picture anyways, a mutant crocodile who was then killed by Darkseid, Damian's own grandfather who is also perished, and Bane who's also perished. And so not a lot to go off of. So Tim is really entering uncharted territory when it comes to the fantastical villains for a Batman to take down. And so with this new villain dubbed Poison Ivy, the mid-season finale would have her brought down to justice, while Damian is able to convince Cassandra that he is, although he's a little, a little piece of shit, not a member of the League of Assassins anymore. And he has left that life behind for a better future. This causes her to abort the mission and contemplate her place in the world. After all, if the grandson of the greatest assassin in the world can change his ways, why can't she? The second part of the season would pick up with Mr. Freeze, who has hit a roadblock in his search for a cure for his wife Nora, who is suffering from terminal disease. She had been put into cryostasis while Victor was looking for a cure. And Victor has also had his accident, which forces him to live in the sub-zero temperatures, by the way. Victor's research eventually leads him to destroying forests and wildlife in the search for his cure. It is a bit before the finale that Cassandra Cain then talks with her mother, Lady Shiva. And although Shiva doesn't trust Damian, she trusts her daughter, and she wouldn't join her, but she also now won't pursue Damian. But one wrong step by the boy wonder, and he won't live long enough to regret it. Cassandra hugs her mother and sets off for the Batcave, where she is then given an old Batgirl suit from Barbara Gordon, and the climax ensues. Poison Ivy is convinced to join the heroes, Batman, Robin, and the newly donned Batgirl, in stopping Mr. Freeze from destroying the ecosystem's balance. During the battle, comms between the heroes and oracles, now that Bruce Wayne is retired from the physicality of Batman, he is Oracle alongside Barbara Gordon. The comms are broken, causing Tim to then have to lead the team on his own. Freeze's defeat begins with Nora's condition worsening, causing him to get distracted. And getting his suit sabotaged, the team then knocks him unconscious. The remaining heroes allow Ivy to regrow the environment, and although Ivy does try to subdue and kill the heroes to escape, she is thwarted by Cassandra, who knocks her unconscious. Back in Arkham, Ivy exchanges her services in creating a missing piece for the cure for Nora for a more comfortable stay in Arkham. Freeze is also locked up in Arkham Asylum, and Bruce Wayne meets with Victor personally and promises Wayne Enterprises would fund the remaining costs that were used to revive Nora. Bruce then shares a new cast showcasing the story in that Victor's research, although utilized with unlawful methods, was partially credited in the revival of his wife, and that she is continuing to rest and recover at Gotham General Hospital, and this has Victor shed tears and thanks Bruce for his generosity, and then willingly spends his sentence in Arkham with his goal fulfilled. In the post-credit scenes, we find that Alfred Pennyworth's will has been found, and it revealing that all of his wealth would be going to a Mr. Dick Grayson. Next up is Aquaman and the Secret Sea. Atlanteans are having trouble accepting a Defender or an Aquaman as young as Jackson. No matter how much Jackson proves in his resume as a hero and ambition to be the best, the story really starts up when Aquaman Jackson is awarded with the title of Waterbearer for his heroism from the leader of the Secret Sea, the Lady of the Lake. Jackson and Mera set out to learn what they can about this Lady of the Lake and go to this Secret Sea. And it turns out that she is an ancient being who was adapted into many stories of folklore, religious texts, and myths. She says that she will award Aquaman with the title, like her awarding Arthur, Excalibur. King Arthur, that is, like from, King Arthur pulling the sword from the stone, Excalibur, not Arthur Curry. Though, when she discovers that Jackson is not the same Aquaman that she had heard so much about, she is outraged and begins to attack Jackson and Mera for their deception. Jackson and Mera both escape the Secret Sea and head back for Atlantis, and the lady sends her living weapon, a parasite known as the Thirst, who can absorb the powers of the heroes. Along their way back, Jackson and Mera are attacked by the Thirst, and many of their guards begin to drown as their abilities are taken away from them. Jackson and Mera reuse the idea from Apocalypse to blow up their ship and abandon it and hopefully defeat the Thirst. Jackson and Mera then both decide that the Thirst is too dangerous if it were to make it to Atlantis or Zebel, so they regroup and try to sort this out with the Lady of the Lake and kill her if need be. Worst case scenario then, if they are dead, then the lady should have no reason to attack Atlantis and Zebel. While back in her home, the climax of the movie begins. A battle between Mera, Jackson, the Thirst, and the Lady of the Lake. The Thirst would be draining Jackson of his abilities when Mera tries to save him by drowning the Thirst in oxygen and forcing out all the moisture by manipulating the water around the Thirst. This is aided by Jackson overloading the Thirst with his power, like a battery, and it appears that Mera is too late. And the Lady of the Lake has calmed herself out of the fight by stating that her job is done. Mera then screams at her for misunderstanding and how evil she is when a divine light appears through Jackson. This is done by Nimue, I hope I pronounced that right, another Lady of the Lake who heard the cry by Mera and revives Jackson with his abilities. Then many other lights appear around the duo, which are all the other souls wrongfully drained by the Thirst. Nimue also explains how there are two Ladies of the Lake. We were imbued with the power from the Lords of Order and Chaos as sisters, who will serve, quote, two sides of a coin. The heroes then leave the Secret Sea with the newly revived souls and offer them a place to stay in Atlantis or Zebel. With this new tale and achievement of sacrifice and bravery by Jackson, the Atlanteans and Zebelians, as well as all members of the oceans, accept Jackson as their new Aquaman. To close out Tales in 34, Donna Troy. After training with the Titans for some time, Donna Troy has requested to live amongst citizens away from metahumans to learn about the world of man, like Diana had suggested. She moves to Boston, where she lives with a host family, Julia Kapatalis, I hope I pronounced this right, that's Greek, it's hard for me to pronounce, and her daughter Vanessa. Donna and Vanessa start their eventual friendship on the wrong foot, because since Vanessa lost her father, she has demanded more from mother's guidance and attention, which is now needing to be shared with Donna. After a short amount of time, though, they get along past that and get along great. Upon hearing word of the new Amazon's arrival, Dr. Edgar Sitsko, aka Dr. Psycho, who is imprisoned in the Greater Boston Institute for the Criminally Insane, plans his escape. When Diana was around in the world of man, Dr. Psycho wanted to use her as his vessel for a criminal, quote, masterpiece. Although he was swiftly dispatched to do Diana's iron willpower and lasso of truth. Capable of breaking any form of malicious mind control, now he wants to make this new Amazonian's life a living hell. After his escape, Dr. Psycho begins to research and discovers the new Amazon is named Donna Troy and is living with a host family right there in Boston. He begins to plan with sending Vanessa nightmares, causing stress constantly, to help alienate Donna from humanity. After some time, stress is caused on Vanessa to trigger her dormant metagene, which causes her to develop wings, a sonic scream, and a strong silver skin. This transformation causes her to wake up in the middle of the night in horror of herself, and she then runs away as Donna and Julia, her mother, rush into the room and get the smallest glimpse of the newly developed metahuman. She'll be causing a large amount of crime in the next part of the movie under the alias Silver Swan. The next portion of the movie would be Donna scouring for Vanessa, trying to help her, as Vanessa, traumatized by fear and loss, amplified and manipulated by Dr. Psycho. Donna eventually gets a clue from Vanessa that her mind was connected to a powerful telepath and is going into archives and using shots from the news, puts together that Dr. Psycho is the one responsible for Vanessa's condition. As Donna finds Psycho, he admits that he wanted to torture all of the people around Donna for what Diana had done to him. Though once he saw the transformation, he decided to double and even triple down on Vanessa, being the vessel for his revenge. This is all said to stall the heroes as Vanessa crashes through the wall and frees Psycho. Though in Psycho's escape, Vanessa is free from his control. Donna and Julia both help fill in Vanessa on what Dr. Psycho's past is and who he really is, as Vanessa is still mentally weak from Psycho's control and tries to reciprocate her nightmares and trauma that was amplified and fed from Psycho. Her comparing herself to Donna and her need for guidance after her father's death being the biggest factors. The heroes put a new plan together that would put down Psycho for good using ancient Amazonian magic. The climax begins with Donna and Vanessa confronting Psycho, in which they are easily dispatched by Psycho and pits the two to fight against each other. Donna doesn't share the same willpower that Diana, since Diana was way more experienced when she fought Psycho originally. I mean, think about it. Diana's first moments with the world of man was in World War I. And Donna has just been living in Titan's Tower. Diana had a lot more willpower. Though Psycho is defeated when Julia, pent up with anger being focused by her will to end Psycho's control over her daughter, uses a gift from Donna, the silver lasso of persuasion. A tool not dissimilar to the golden lasso of truth, though it persuades the target rather than forces out the truth, but only if the user's will is stronger than the target. Dr. Psycho is dispatched out to Slabside Penitentiary in Antarctica, far away from any civilization, and Donna invites Vanessa to join her with the Teen Titans to help hone her new abilities. She is hesitant at first, still wanting to be a normal person as much as possible, but Donna convinces her that she says she isn't doing this to make her a superhero in any way if she doesn't want to. The Titans are simply an organization to aid developing metahumans to control their powers. Only those who desire the hero life stay as mentors or go on to the Justice League. The post-credit scene would then be simply a fun scene of the Titans inviting Vanessa in and calling her mom, saying that she is happy here and looks forward to visiting her again soon. To start 2035, the Green Lantern Corps Season 2, Warworld. Opening the season's first episode or two would focus on the horror of Warworld. We would only see or hear glimpses of the planet as the Green Lanterns discover that there have been kidnappings from various planets, all telling horror stories of this hellscape. As Jessica Cruz, Kilowog, Guy Gardner, Jon Stewart, Simon Baz, and Kyle Rayner are returning from a relief mission, they are abducted by Warworld slave ships. Upon waking in Warworld, the Lanterns see that they still have their rings. However, if they try to use them, they get zapped with electricity. This comes from the implant on their body that cannot be removed. Looking around, they notice other beings. Many of them are from the villages that they have been visiting, and they meet some of the missing family members. Before any words can be exchanged, an alarm grabs the hero's attention, and carcasses fall through vents from the ceiling near them. Everyone, say hello to Maisie. She's very needy. All right, go. And where were we? An alarm grabbing the hero's attention and carcasses falling through a vent in the ceiling near them. The bodies full of fatal wounds. Then a herald approaches the room. The new champions will see their first opponents soon. Fight, or become food for your ruler, Mongol. The Lanterns then try learning anything and everything about their new setting from the habitants, though none are willing to talk out of trauma, depression, or helplessness. John and Kilowog suggest that they get their rest as there is no real way of escape for the moment, and they'll need all of their rest for whatever is in store for them tomorrow. The next day, the horrors are revealed as Guy, Kyle, and Kilowog enter the arena first. Although Guy has been confident leading up to this match, in which the Lanterns get some access to their ring's power, but only if they stay within the arena. He had returned with Kyle and Kilowog in shock. It is around here when the viewers see the gruesomeness of Warworld, bordering on R-rated violence. The next handful of episodes would deal with the Lanterns getting their bearings and giving their fellow champions hope. After a powerful performance between all 6 Lanterns and a major foe, we formally meet the ruler, Mongol, an 8-foot, half-ton behemoth. He wishes to congratulate the heroes and awards them with a fight of the year. His personal champion, Draga. During the later battle between the Lanterns and Draga, Draga is defeated, though the Lanterns refuse to kill that champion, much to the dismay of Mongol and even Draga, who sees it as a dishonorable move. And cheer from the crowd for the nobility, Mongol steps down and targets Kilowog specifically for his size, and that he was holding the spear that was at Draga's throat. He reveals a yellow power ring on his hand, and he kills Kilowog in front of the repulsed crowd. We also learn through later episodes about the relationship between Mongol and his overseers, the R&D scientists making the technology to make Warworld work. The overseers would be increasingly upset with Mongol, beginning with Kilowog's death and the future outbreaks from the unstable ruler. Using Kilowog's death as motivation, the remaining Lanterns and Champions plan a revolution, even recruiting Draga, who, although dislikes the Lanterns' lack of honor, joins the group for a greater disservice that Mongol showed in Kilowog's murder. Mongol would eventually be defeated when Draga smashes the yellow ring and his chest cannon, and the riots cause enough panic amongst the overseers that the devices used to shock and control the champions are destroyed, fully freeing the slaves and allowing the Lanterns to perform evacuations. Mongol himself is killed when various champions break his arms and his legs, then have him drawn and quartered. This season ends with the seeing of families reunited and funerals are held for the fallen champions, including Kilowog. While in the post-credit scenes, while Draga is ruling over the remains of Warworld, Brainiac collects the planet. To close out 2035, Supergirl Acceptance. Inspired by Captain America Brave New World, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We begin our story with following a still grief-stricken Lois Lane and Kara Zor-El/Danvers delivering pieces of Clark/Cal's DNA to Star Labs for scientific research, which was part of the last wishes of the Kryptonian, so his Kryptonian biology could be studied further. Kara continues through the first part of the story, doing the best she can to uphold the image and legacy of her cousin, but she is constantly reminded that she is not him and that humanity doesn't trust her in the same way without him. Meanwhile, back at Star Labs, the head of the research team, Dr. Sidney Happerson, is one of the many folks who believe that Supergirl is never living up to the legend and legacy that was Superman, and in his lack of faith decides to point the direction of their research of the Kryptonian DNA to cloning the Man of Steel under the name Project Changeling. This project fails, however, and in these scientists' mistakes, they create the creature that will be known as Bizarro. Since Bizarro has many of the emotions and even some of the past memories of Clark, he immediately goes to check up on Lois Lane and the family. While Lois is helping her son John, who's about 10 or 11 years old by now, with his homework, Bizarro comes in, breaking down the wall to their home, and Lois and John scream in fear at the zombified doppelganger, as Supergirl comes to draw Bizarro away and protect the family. Kara has the opening to do this because John instinctually defends him and his mother, as his powers had begun to properly develop recently. Similar events happening throughout the second act as Kara tracks it down and tries to understand the creation. Bizarro begins to question his own humanity and purpose for life. He is reminded of his creator, Dr. Happerson, and his team while they are on the news, redirecting the blame of the destruction to himself and Supergirl. Bizarro then decides that his new target will be his father, Dr. Happerson. During the climax, Supergirl must defend the scientists that blame her and failed to trust her against their own creation while calming said creation down, and in the end, properly point out the accountability of everybody, including herself's actions. Those being mistakes that she was bound to make just naturally as a superhero. The story then ends with humanity reciprocating their respect, trust, and love for Supergirl that she has for them, as Bizarro is allowed to be free in a separate lab for pacifistic study and habilitation, as to also serve the remainder of whatever sentence he would be given for the destruction. In the post-credit scenes, Bizarro is then stolen from this humanitarian lab by the Black Mask, Roman Sionis. Next up is Bat Family Season 3, War for Bloodhaven's Heart. And the story starts with Alfred's will being reviewed, and he had left Dick Grayson a massive gift. All of the wealth he had built over the years with Wayne Enterprises, so Dick inherits billions. He hears the news with Coriander staying at his apartment in Bloodhaven. With the money, he decides to openly fund, as Dick Grayson, an organization for troubled youth in Bloodhaven. As a lot of these events are happening, we see that Blockbuster was mysteriously broken out of prison and is rebuilding his position of power in Bloodhaven rather efficiently. He becomes the practical mayor of Bloodhaven when he kills the sitting mayor, then intimidates the soon-to-be interim mayor, Melinda Zuko, Tony Zuko's daughter. We come back to Dick Grayson as he is suspected for murder when a man is killed in a hotel room that was booked by Grayson for the night, while his son was able to get away. Corey provides the police with an alibi and frees Dick Grayson, and Dick is then asked how this gentleman had died, and the police answers, his heart was ripped out of his chest. The following morning, Dick recruits Damian Wayne to go undercover to find the kid of the victim and learn what he can about the killer. As it turns out, the killer was a man without a heart, and sadly, the kid wasn't the only victim orphaned by this heartless individual. We would hear about Heartless's origin later in the show, but here it is for you now. His real name is Shelton Lyle, and he grew up similarly to Bruce Wayne, though was much more violent and obsessed with killing. His butler, who was also a sociopath, a man posing as a butler to steal the wealth of that family, though saw the horrid potential in the young child and fostered these violent tendencies. The plot chosen to kill Lyle's parents was to kill them in a helicopter crash. Only problem was that Shelton happened to be in the helicopter and suffered major injuries as the sole survivor. The butler helped save young Shelton Lyle by having his heart replaced with his father's and relying on cybernetic implants. After falling in love with his parents being dead and the feeling of the enhancements, the duo kept upgrading Shelton. Then Lyle's enhancements eventually caused him to need to be regularly replacing his own heart due to strain on the enhancements. Throughout the story, Dick would become unlikely allies with the interim mayor, Melinda Zuko. As it turns out, she is his half-sister. Before Dick Grayson was born, her mother had an affair with John Grayson while she was with Tony Zuko. While she was about 8 years old, Melinda, her mother told her the truth and went to try to meet John, though now he was married and Dick was born. To not complicate things, as John seemed happy and she never then reunited with him and went back to Tony Zuko. Once Dick Grayson publicly announced his donation to the city, she couldn't ignore the opportunity to meet and help Dick with the project. We would find out later that in the show that it was actually Heartless, Shelton Lyle, who broke Blockbuster out of prison and helped him get into power. With more crime back on the streets, his heart theft would go far more unnoticed and allow him to kill more people. Though, after a war for Bloodhaven's heart between Nightwing and Blockbuster, the villainous duo finally meet in the deserted alleyway. Blockbuster learns that it was Heartless who helped him escape, and Heartless tells him that it is time for Blockbuster to help him now. It is then that Heartless rips out Blockbuster's heart, killing him and providing Heartless with his most powerful heart yet. The climax would eventually come as a final battle between Nightwing and Heartless. The two would duel for some time, although Heartless would have fits of pain throughout the fight. This would be caused by Blockbuster's hearts just not only being too big for him, but also because it was experimented on for years by Roland's brother just before the transformation. These complications causes Heartless to fall dead during the final battle, freeing Bloodhaven from his and Blockbuster's reign. Now, with an ideal mayor in Melinda Zuko, Blockbuster gone for good, and Nightwing patrolling streets, Dick Grayson also helping with the troubled youth, the people of Bloodhaven can rest easy for a long time. To close out 2036, there is Firestorm. Ronnie Raymond was about as normal a high school student as you could get. He played sports, showed up to class, has a crush, and a close mentor in his chemistry teacher in Dr. Martin Stein. Ronnie wasn't the best at chemistry and came in often for office hours for Dr. Stein's help. And during one of these meetings, Ronnie had mentioned to him that there was a protest at a nuclear reactor nearby and he wanted to go and impress his crush, which Stein begged him and other students not to go to. The other students that Ronnie went with were secretly planning on sabotaging the reactor, and it ends up going horribly wrong when there is an explosion. Dr. Stein, who followed Ronnie secretly to try to convince him to leave, was also caught in this explosion, and this causes the two's metagenes to partially activate. The explosion then causes massive power outage that shuts off power to the city and the nearby prison, Belle Reve. It releases a rejected member of Task Force X, the Suicide Squad, Caitlin Snow, or Killer Frost. She starts causing mayhem all around town, and while the duo of Ronnie, Raymond, and Stein are experimenting on how their new powers work and what happened to them at the reactor, they notice Killer Frost is loose once again for the first time in 18 years. This causes distress in Dr. Stein when Ronnie asks what the problem is. Stein then walks Ronnie through his past before becoming a teacher. Dr. Stein and Caitlin Snow were both scientists at Star Labs when the Hive started attacking, which Caitlin was one of the first people affected by the Hive, having her entire family become workers for Queen Bee. For those who do not remember, Queen Bee and the Hive were the villains of the original first Suicide Squad movie in my Phase 2 fanfiction. In a dramatic attempt to fight back, she and Dr. Stein developed a concoction that would give her the ability to control the cold, which would massively stop the killer bees. Although this plan worked, the two failed in the sense that she would now crave heat and not be able to properly control her powers. After the Hive was defeated, Caitlin was arrested for crimes she had caused due to her condition and was never seen again, not even in court. During the next parts of the movie, the heroes would have run-ins with Killer Frost, and eventually develop that Firestorm Matrix to help control their transformations and hone their abilities. Killer Frost shows that her plan is to hunt down all of her colleagues that had failed and abandoned her. It is just before the climax when our heroes discover that they would be able to help Caitlin control her need for heat by using their energy and molecular reconstruction abilities. They find her and are able to convince her that this is the best way to help her. She also walks through what had happened to her since her arrest. Turns out the cops were actually working for Amanda Waller as she wanted to force Caitlin into the Suicide Squad. Though without any living relatives to hold against her, or being unable to put a bomb in her neck because of the ice, she was not able to be forcibly controlled by Waller and was thrown into solitary confinement seemingly for the rest of her life in secret. The climax would then be Caitlin not wanting to hurt anyone anymore, but still unable to properly control her abilities as the police and other heroes attempt to subdue her and possibly kill her. Ronnie and Stein are able to transform into Firestorm, buy a few moments of time to help Caitlin quench her thirst for heat and bring her to stable condition. Since she was denied proper due process for her original outbreak, she would only be tried for this recent campaign, and her sentence would be serving community service alongside the Titans organization, so she would be rehabilitated into society while being able to learn to control her abilities in a productive way. While in the post-credit scenes, we see Caitlin and Ronnie/Dr. Stein officially joining the Teen Titans. Caitlin, of course, not being a teenager anymore. Caitlin is asked for a code name. Since she isn't a killer, she drops that part of her old name and just simply says Frost. And Ronnie and Dr. Stein go with Firestorm because of their Firestorm Matrix. I know I said Firestorm closes out 2036. I lied. It's this next movie, Blue Beetle, that closes out 2036. Although this movie would take place in the following year in 2037. This will be a minor retooling of the existing Blue Beetle movie. Instead of having Jaime coming back from college and looking for work, instead, he is going to be looking to take a gap year after graduating high school. So he'll then get that job with Cord, and Cord is looking to try to create the next cyborg. So that is their motivation, is using Kajida and trying to use the technology to create the next cyborg. The movie is otherwise relatively untouched. Jaime graduates high school around 17. He'll turn 18 sometime during or shortly after the main story. Jenny Cord is no older than about 19 or so. And the post-credit scenes, it's very similar to the existing movie. Ted Cord, the original Blue Beetle, is teased to be alive. To start off the last year of Phase 6, the Green Lantern Corps, the war against Brainiac. This will be season 3, and it would begin with the remnants of Warworld being collected by Brainiac. As he is doing this, he sees more of the recent success of the Green Lantern Corps, and decides to set his eyes on the next target, Oa. Some survivors from Warworld have escaped and made their way to Oa in time to warn the Lanterns that Brainiac is on his way. Over the course of the season, Green Lanterns, Jon Stewart, Guy Gardner, Jessica Cruz, Kyle Rayner, and Simon Baz would try to stop Brainiac before his arrival, eventually realizing that there is nothing that can be done prematurely. The plan then shifts to defense as they prepare Oa for the fight of a generation and recruit as much help as they can. They even bring in Supergirl, as well as Martian Manhunter from the Justice League to help as their planets were threatened or even taken by Brainiac, and Kara then suggests the name of someone else who can help. Someone who they haven't seen since Darkseid's invasion, Lobo. There would be an episode or two dedicated to tracking down the Zarnian, and when we first see him on screen, we would be reminded of his history with flashbacks to his home planet being stolen while he was young. His recruitment scene would be in a bar, and he would be typical Lobo up until when he sees Kara and the Lanterns and hears them mention their plan against Brainiac, and the situation that they are in. Uncharacteristically, Lobo is silent at the mention of Brainiac, almost as if he wants nothing to do with the mission. Then he would stoically reply, "When do we frackin' leave?" Going into the final battle, which would take multiple episodes, by the way, Oa would be taken by the Colonian Collector. Though, in the final battle, the heroes are able to beat Brainiac and release his hold of the planet. And although all of the heroes would get their blows on Brainiac for the damage that he had caused them, it would be Lobo to get the final killing blow. The next project, Booster Gold. Starting our story in the 25th century, we meet Michael Carter, who is a star college quarterback for Gotham University. He was raised with his twin sister Michelle and their mother Ellen Carter. His father, however, John Carter, is a deadbeat, gambling addict POS who is in deep with some very bad people in Gotham City underworld. When Michael's mother started suffering from a debilitating disease, he started throwing games and gambling to afford the treatments to help her. Eventually, Michael is found out and his mother is distraught of the truth, and Michael is sent to jail. And his father, who has tried to get money for his debts, had gone missing. After his time served, his mother had passed away from her sickness, and Michael went to live with his sister Michelle and start a job as a security guard at the Justice League Museum. Here, Michael fell in love with the stories of superheroes in the golden days, and Michael commits the idea to change his life and becomes a superhero in the past, and Michelle, trying to be the voice of reason, tries to stop him. Only she inadvertently joins him. Michael had grabbed suits for himself and Michelle, while also taking his security bot Skeets, and they used Rip Hunter's time machine to travel back to the mid-2010s. While trying to save the US president from an attack, he is asked what his name is, which he fumbles, meaning to say Gold Star, but saying Booster Gold, because Booster was his nickname while on the football team. Michelle seizes the opportunity to mess with Michael and introduces herself as Gold Star. During their time in the past, the siblings start fighting crime and run into a hero named Blue Beetle, Ted Kord. Fascinated by their technology, Blue Beetle follows the duo to their hideaway, where he hears a conversation confirming that these two are from the future. Ted reveals himself here, where three of them exchange their identities, and Ted asks them for their help with some crazy tech that he had stolen from a villain, this being Kajida, which is stolen from Supernova. Ted explains that this scarab device is where he took his namesake and inspiration for all of his themed gadgets, though he was never able to figure out how it worked. It is here where Supernova shows up and is oddly shocked when angered when he sees Booster Gold and Gold Star. The family members all recognize each other instantly, and in elements of surprise, the scarab gets stolen back from Supernova and he destroys the building and leaves them in the rubble. As it turns out, Supernova is Michael and Michelle's father, John Carter. Skeets helps Michael and Michelle fill in Ted on what the device is and what it is capable of when the trio prepare for the climax of the movie. Here, we are provided context for what Supernova is planning to do with the scarab. He is looking to bring it to his boss, who is secretly Black Beetle, to have him merge with Kajida in exchange for his freedom. During the climax, our heroes Booster, Gold Star, and Blue Beetle meet with Supernova in his lair. Michael and Michelle ask their father what had happened to him, which he fills them in on his past/future. He is in horrible gambling debt, and on his road to paying off the mob, he had inadvertently joined the Time Stealers, and became a supervillain, being tasked with getting this scarab, which would lead to his freedom. The heroes are able to stop Supernova, though in the escape from the collapsing underground lair, Michelle sacrifices herself to save her brother and Ted. In the post-credit scenes, the first one is after the funeral is held for Michelle, Michael and Ted are walking back to their car when they are approached by another time traveler who recruits Booster to help with a mission. This leads Ted to start a family with his girlfriend. In the second post-credit scene, we fast forward to a young Jenny Cord, about a decade time jump, so she's probably about 8 years old by this point, coming home from school and her dad is missing. Now, the finale for Phase 6, Teen Titans. The cold open for the film would follow Grant Wilson attempting to fulfill a contract as the Ravager on the Titans Tower, which ultimately fails and results in his death. The Titans collect themselves and reprioritize their security system, having Darla and Eugene of the Marvel family focus their efforts in mentoring the youngest Titans, the ones younger than teenagers, and to not go on offensive missions. They would be the last line of defense for the tower, and the opening would end with the news of Grant Wilson's death being brought to his father, Slade Wilson, or Deathstroke the Terminator, and he offers to complete his son's contract and kill the Titans. We would learn more about Slade Wilson's backstory through dialogue, but we would learn about his daughter Rose's backstory through flashbacks. She was born to a Cambodian mother named Lillian Worth, nicknamed Sweet Lily, and she had met Slade Wilson while she was on a search and rescue op with the Army. Her father was not aware of Rose's existence until years later when her and her mother nursed Slade after one of his missions. Rose learned of her parentage by Slade's brother while trying to capture her for himself, though to protect her daughter, Sweet Lily, had him run over with a car but doomed the both of them by driving off a cliff. Rose was then taken in by her father, and Slade had over the years been secretly giving her the same serum that increased his abilities, which has her suffering from psychosis. Rose, now as the new Ravager, would have a run-in with Batgirl / Cassandra Cain, Superboy, Impulse, and Starfire, who were out on a training exercise. Rose would have incapacitated Impulse and Superboy, which then forces Starfire to try to help them. Her and Batgirl would then have a 1v1, which Cassandra would win, forcing Rose's retreat. While back in Deathstroke's warehouse, she would be scolded for her failure after a spar with her other half-brother, Joseph. To prove her loyalty to Slade, with delusion from the drugs, she gouges out her eye to emulate her father, and the plan would then be that if Slade's training is not enough, then she would go undercover and learn from the Teen Titans themselves as Rose, not Ravager. She is welcomed hesitantly by Cassandra into the Titans for training using the cover of an orphaned metahuman with advanced reflexes and senses, using elements of her life story as background, involving her mother. Over the time that she is learning and training, mostly with Cassandra, Dick, Damian, and Donna, she notices that she's becoming much more calm and less volatile the longer she is away from her father, obviously due to her not receiving as much of the serum and slowly recovering from psychosis. She is slowly starts deciding to trust the Titans more and more than her father in the ways that they treat people around them. Rose returns to her father and pleads with him to spare the Titans after learning of where their hearts as heroes truly lie. And after she learns that there is no way he'll change his mind, she escapes him only long enough to warn the Titans. She is then taken back with him, but only after Deathstroke shoots Nightwing, Starfire, and Beast Boy, narrowly hitting Raven, Frost, and Donna, who escape the harm with their abilities since Slade had lost the element of surprise by that point. A rescue mission is then organized by the remaining members: Raven, Static Shock, Donna Troy, Frost, Robin, that's Damian Wayne, Superboy, Blue Beetle, and Firestorm, Batgirl, and even Arsenal. Superboy and Impulse would be still recovering from Rose's initial attack, and since they are also the youngest and least experienced members of the team, they would actually be asked to stay behind with Darla and Eugene. Prior to the final battle, Joseph would question what is happening to Rose, and Slade would then slice his throat, spewing his blood, and Slade would then spit his disdain for his lack of spine and being the weakest of his 3 children. Deathstroke then would have planned for the arrival of the Titans to rescue Rose, and sets traps to aid him in the climactic battle, which would be epic. seeing Deathstroke take 1v1s, 1v2s, and even 1v3s as he battles all of the remaining Titans effectively at once. Superboy and Impulse would escape Titan's tower without Darla and Eugene knowing, and when they arrive on the scene of the climax, the heroes recruit them since they are the fastest to rush Joseph off to medical professionals and return to the tower once he is properly taken by doctors. Which, I mean, they would also be in shock at what's happening, so they would very, very gladly take this. What eventually would do Deathstroke in is Jaime, Donna, and Frost would slowly be breaking through Slade's armor piece by piece. Then Static Shock overloads his senses with electricity, rendering his enhanced senses useless, while Firestorm is able to help Damian and Cassandra break Rose's chains. Rose breaks her ties with her father and turns down the offer to join the Titans. After the drugs are cleared from her mind, she suspects that Slade had fed her more lies than she may have initially thought, and decides to take up a search for her mother, who might still be alive. Deathstroke is then sent to high security prison, and Joseph wakes up in a hospital unable to speak. Our wounded heroes from the Attack on Titan's tower wake with minimal injuries, though Nightwing feels immense hatred for Slade for threatening, injuring, and nearly killing his family. In the post-credit scenes, it turns out the man who had contracted Deathstroke to kill the Titans was Vandal Savage, who had escaped his prison in the Justice League Watchtower. The first project of Phase 7 is Justice League Dark: Spirits of the Elements. Final phase begins with seeing our JLD members just living their casual lives. Nothing too crazy going on as we follow John Constantine, Zatanna Zatara, Rack Shade, Raven, Boston Brand, Madame Xanadu, and Kent Nelson. Suddenly, the team gets ambushed by robotic elemental foes, and these will end up being Firebrand, Red Torpedo, Geoquake, and Tornado Tyrant. Constantine and Zatanna will battle the Tornado Tyrants, Raven will battle Geoquake, Rack and Xanadu will battle Red Torpedo, and lastly Kent and Boston will battle Firebrand. The team, after destroying all these androids, then meet and compare notes, and learn that these were possibly designed to house the real elements of elemental spirits, of water, earth, fire, and air. Can you tell I like Avatar? The scene then ends with the team asking the question that if there are these spirits of these elements, then where are they? When we cut to the villains of the movie, Dr. T.O. Morrow and Dr. Anthony Ivo, they are both victims of past escapades of members of the JLD. Morrow's mother was killed by Hecate / the Upside Down Man in Hellblazers, and Ivo's grandfather was victim to the Gray Man back in Dr. Fate. They are fighting over the effectiveness of the elemental androids. Morrow was for them and Ivo was against them. Ivo was taking his time to develop the superior android. Morrow is pissed to find out that 3 of the 4 spirits have gone to find new beings to strengthen. Water went to the new Aquaman, Jackson Hyde. Earth went to Swamp Thing, and fire went to Ronnie Raymond, the body of Firestorm. Going back to the heroes, Xanadu, Shade, and Raven then try to track spiritual energy emanating from the androids and pairing that with process of elimination and logical thinking to come up with the new beings, being Jackson Hyde, Swamp Thing, and Firestorm. This leaves the air spirit, quote, up in the air. The team then not only discovered the new hosts, but they followed their trails back to scientists Ivo and Morrow, and they concluded that since the 3 of the spirits have new bodies, he's likely trying to salvage the air spirit and see them working on a nearly complete android, and one is just started. The next part of this movie would see those 3 new heroes, Jackson Hyde, Swamp Thing, and Firestorm, trying to run away from what was nearly now completed android created by Ivo. That is Amazo. And they are all then brought in by the JLD to help defeat the android that they're going to be fighting in the climax alongside Amazo, the Red Tornado. Amazo wouldn't be defeated though until the climax of the movie, like I said earlier, and along the midsection of the movie, Shade the Changing Man and Madame Xanadu are going to be killed by Amazo. The climax will follow Ivo's death at the hands of Morrow, and then Amazo will be put under control by Morrow. While in the finale, the heroes are having trouble with Amazo, and all hope would seem lost when the new android awakens. A problem arrives from Morrow when the red tornado doesn't obey his commands and Amazo becomes enraged. The nail in the coffin for Morrow is when Tornado sneak attacks Amazo, which turns the tide in battle, and Amazo is torn to shreds. To shreds, you say. Morrow is sent to prison, where we then learn from Red Tornado why he turned against his creator and gained sentience. His quote-unquote soul came from the air spirit, though in Morrow's haste, as safety protocols were ignored to make sure that he'd be ready for the JLD's attack. The JLD agreed that with the death of Xanadu and Shade, it's best to leave the team behind and focus on their own lives. In the post-credit scenes, a distant memory of Naboo is battling an ancient being during the plagues of Egypt. This ancient being is clad in white and green. Continuing in 2038 is Bat Family Season 4, The Outlaws. Jason Todd has been struggling with a sense of purpose and identity with the rebirth and place within the Bat family. He feels that he cannot work next to Bruce, Tim, Cass, and Damian in Gotham, or Dick Grayson in Bloodhaven, especially since he's becoming a bigger philanthropist. He has been taking odd jobs here and there from various contractors, and his newest is from Roman Sionis, the Black Mask. And he's contracted to steal cargo on a train. While on the train, Jason is shocked to find someone else seemingly doing his contract, Roy Harper. It's also noted that Roy Harper would be dealing with drug issues throughout the entire season of the show. The two would get into a quick spar before having the fight ended by a third party, who appears to almost be Amazonian. This is Artemis, and this would be roughly where episode 1 would end. We would then have flashbacks in the next episode to learn who Artemis is and how the Bonamic doll splintered from the Amazons thousands of years ago and found their way to Egypt. We also learn about the Bow of Ra and that it is what she is looking for and believes to be on the train. By the time we catch up to the present, we close episode 2 by having these three characters find the secret weapon on the train. Bizarro. Over the next few episodes, we learn more about the villains of the season, this of course being Black Mask, who is looking to take over all of organized crime in the country, or possibly even the world, by using a prototype mask that would allow him to control the minds of another. With him only being able to control one mind at a time, Black Mask targets Bizarro as his ultimate prize. The three heroes, Jason, Roy, and Artemis, would feel like they are being forced to work with one another and start to loathe one another. Though Bizarro would choose to stay with the Outlaws, because he and Jason start to feel a connection and Jason sympathizes with Bizarro by comparing their shared experience of waking up drowning or being made to serve a purpose against your nature. The climax of the season begins when the heroes, Red Hood, Artemis, Bizarro, and Arsenal, are taking on Black Mask's mob. By the time they reach Sionis, he is wearing his new mind control mask, and he shows that he has a brute right hand to his business, Solomon Grundy. Sionis starts controlling Bizarro to use him to attack Red Hood, though Artemis jumps in the way and takes the blow, allowing Jason to relocate. Doing this reveals where the Bow of Ra has been and how one gets it. The bow was taken back by Ra and would be bestowed upon a champion worthy of the title of Shimtar. Artemis attempts to take a shot with the bow at Grundy or Sionis, who is appearing to be in pain, synchronized with Bizarro, though she passes out from the strike from Bizarro. Roy then takes up the opportunity to take the Bow of Ra and fires off a shot at Grundy, who has Jason in a death grip. He catches fire while he takes the shots, saving Jason, but at the cost of his own life. Grundy is downed and in the revival process, and then Jason then moves towards Sionis, who is now screaming in pain on the ground as he removes the Black Mask from Sionis' face. Turns out, taking over the mind of a defective clone of Superman and being bombarded with the Kryptonian language in his head was a really bad idea. Sionis is now permanently and effectively brain dead as he is sent off to Arkham Asylum, and Artemis comes to. She, Jason, and Bizarro hold a funeral for Roy Harper, in which the Bat family, aside from Cassandra Cain for a future reasons in a project, Oliver Queen, Dinah Lance, and all the Titans attend. The trio then go their separate ways and move on to the next part of their lives. In the post-credit scenes, Jason is in the Batcave reminiscing about being Robin, and he hears a voice, Bruce's. He rolls in on his wheelchair, and the two have a big heart-to-heart, finishing with Bruce saying these words: "I was 100% confident that you would screw up, Jason. I didn't ask you to be Robin because I wanted somebody perfect. I wanted somebody who could learn from their mistakes and do their best. Someone who makes me a better person just by being with them. Bruce then shares some poorly made cheeseburgers that he had made for himself for the two of them. Closing out 2038 is a miniseries, The New Gods, and this will be taking inspiration from the Mr. Miracle run by Tom King in 2017. And the series would begin with seeing Barr pregnant with her and Scott's first child, as the two are enjoying a quiet, simple life on Earth. Though this would be interrupted by a message by Metron, who is a neutral observer of the New Gods. There are problems within New Genesis, the normally peaceful and benevolent counterpart to Apocalypse, as two forgotten sons of Darkseid are challenging Orion, the current ruler of New Genesis, for rule of the world after the assassination of Highfather Isaiah, Scott's birth father and Orion's adoptive father. Orion and Scott Free were actually traded at birth as a pact/truce between Highfather Isaiah and Darkseid, Orion being Darkseid's birth son and Scott being Highfather Isaiah's birth son, and the counterpart being the adoptive father. The Forgotten Sons are Graven and Kalibak, half-brothers who sharing Darkseid for a father who feel betrayed of their birthright for ruling Apocalypse since the planet was destroyed in the Darkseid War, and now they're seeking the throne of New Genesis. They are joined by Kanto, an apocalyptian assassin who is the weapon who killed Highfather Isaiah. The next couple of episodes would have the heroes, mostly Scott and Orion, fight the Forgotten Sons and deal with the New Genesian politics, and who should be the new ruler of New Genesis and how to stop Kraven, Kalibak, and Kanto. Orion would also be torn in wanting to help Scott and Barr, as he also wants the throne for himself, though would rather not see Graven or Kalibak take over. Barr would also give birth around this time to a baby boy who will be named Jacob, which is just the name that he was given in the Tom King run. I honestly don't know if Jacob has any meaning beyond that. That's just the name that they gave him. And shortly before the climax, Graven would discover that he had inherited Darkseid's Omega Beams and uses them to kill Kalibak and sees himself as truly unstoppable now. And he keeps Kanto as his executioner, similar to Hela and Scourge in Thor Ragnarok. The climax of the show would have Barr make a Farron knife, a weapon capable of killing a new god, since New Genesis has no weapons on its surface as an inherently peaceful world. Graven and Kanto would invade New Genesis after a long, grueling fight where Barr, Orion, and Kanto would be knocked out, and Scott would barely kill Graven with the Farron knife, though he would be nearly unconscious as he lays on the ground exhausted, as he sees Kanto then come up looking for the opportunity to take out the rest of the new god royals. He is then stopped by Orion, who trades his life with Kanto as they then kill each other. Scott and Barr would then take the challenge and responsibility to lead New Genesis into a new era, the two of them raised by both New Genesis and Apocalypse, while learning a peaceful life on Earth. Plus, now having Jacob, their son, literally born on Earth, two parents from the twin planets of New Genesis and Apocalypse, as their heir to continue the legacy after their eventual passing. This will be the end of Scott Free and Big Barda's story in this fanfiction, as I believe their story is now complete. Open up 2039, Teen Titans Deception. After the fallout of the Darkseid War, Brainiac's invasion of Oa, and the Justice League's mantles being passed down, the Watchtower is left heavily unguarded, leaving it for an all-time easy jailbreak for Vandal Savage. Savage's next move is breaking Deathstroke out of prison, saying something along the lines of, "Now that you're properly motivated to do some work, let's kill some Titans." The Titans would learn that Savage has escaped when Bruce gets a warning from the Watchtower while in the Batcave. Bruce understands the severity of the situation and immediately called Dick and Damian to gather the Titans, whose full lineup will be, as adults, these are the Titans: Nightwing, Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy, Static Shock, Donna Troy, Frost, and Martin Stein's half of Firestorm. And then the teenagers or younger crowd will be Robin, which is Damian Wayne, of course. He'll be 19, pushing 20 by this point. Superboy at the age of 15. Impulse at the age of 16. Jaime Reyes is Blue Beetle at around 19. Ronnie Raymond will be about 18. And Cassandra Cain's Batgirl at about age 18 as well. And then I don't have their ages, but Darla and Eugene from the Marvel family will also be present in this movie in extreme minor roles. They'll be playing, teacher and mostly defense at Titan's Tower. Bruce would provide his notes on the past events in verbal and physical form to the Teen Titans to arm them with as much knowledge of their new foe as possible. The note of the League having help from two exceptional people is also made, and the Titans would love to have their help if these two had lived, of course, being Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Again, this is all referencing Justice League 2, Justice League Eternal, which happened all the way back in Phase 2 of the fanfiction. There was one crucial statement that is in the notes that is quoted from the duo that is, quote, "We are cursed to reincarnate, meet, fall in love, regain our memories, and fight Vandal Savage until the end of time. Or he is finally killed." End quote. The Titans can have their help, though they may not know who they are yet. The next portion of the movie would focus on these Titans, being Donna Troy, Firestorm, Blue Beetle, Impulse, Superboy, Batgirl, Raven, Nightwing, and possibly some others that I don't end up naming later specifically, tracking down who/where the new Hawkman and Hawkgirl are, playing matchmaker, and look to trigger their memories to return. When they find them, they are 16-year-old high school students. All the while, back in Titan's Tower, a new recruit is being trained by Darla, Eugene, Starfire, and extra closely by Beast Boy, a geokinetic named Terra. Of course, with the mention of Terra, all of you know that this is going to be primarily a Judas Contract type story. Continuing with the villains, we learn part of Savage's plan. He plans to power himself further by stealing the abilities of various heroes, and to help him buy time and the powers to steal, he has rehired Deathstroke and lent him a helper, this being, of course, Terra, to go undercover and kidnap members of the Titans. He targets the Titans specifically because they are less experienced than the Justice League, while still having the full potential of their powers available. It is still unclear at this point how Savage plans to steal their powers. Once Hawkman and Hawkgirl regain their memories after falling in love once again, they sadly don't retain much of their muscle memories since they have entirely new bodies, though they still have their knowledge and memories to provide for the team about Vandal Savage. They slowly start providing hints of potential ways of killing him that they have thought up over the years. Things like throwing him into the sun, dropping him with weights into the Marianas Trench, the Spear of Destiny, which is the spear that pierces the side of Christ in the Bible, which sadly is technically lost to time as now there are multiple spears claiming to be the real one, and not to mention the taboo of using an item such as the spear even if they were to find it. Terra would feel that now is the time to strike. While some of the Titans are out, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl are back, but not at the tower. She, with the help of Deathstroke, incapacitates Titans and kidnap them to bring to Savage's bunker. They get Starfire, Beast Boy, Static Shock, Frost, Darla, and they kill Eugene since they don't need duplicate abilities. They also kidnap Robin, Damian, but not before he sends an SOS outing Terra as a traitor and seeing a glimpse of Deathstroke in the message to Dick Grayson. A fire of hatred builds within Grayson, seeing Deathstroke harming his family once again as him and the remaining Titans devise a plan to kill Deathstroke, including Grayson making a single phone call. It is upon arriving at the bunker that they discover him working for/with Vandal Savage. Also, Damian is kept in a cell since he has no abilities. It is revealed that Savage is using the recently discovered power from Deathstroke's son, Joseph, or Jericho from the comics, who has the ability of possession. Our heroes and villains get into a chaotic battle in this climax underground. Terra uses her abilities to keep Impulse, Hawkman, and Hawkgirl trapped and grounded, leaving other less powered characters for Deathstroke to battle, using Kryptonite for Superboy. Savage tries to attack Superboy with his sword once he's down, but is stopped by another blade, wielded by his daughter, Rose, who Dick called earlier, by the way. Once Savage powers up, the fight turns drastically. The heroes are about to lose with an overpowered, immortal being against them, though it is Savage's greed, lust, and glutton for power that is his own undoing. He targets Terra as his next victim, and in her resistance, the underground bunker starts caving in on the fight. Raven will use this as a chance to talk to Joseph in Savage's mind and helps him to get free of Savage's mental prison, while he is distracted by Rose talking through Savage physically in an attempt for her brother to hear her through him. Once the Kryptonite is crushed by a boulder, Superboy is able to rejoin the fight and helping Donna hold down Vandal Savage. Firestorm then uses their matrix, suggested by a depowered Frost, to break the powers within him apart. This succeeds in hurting Savage even further than before. Messing with his molecular structure like this frees him for permanent injuries. Joseph at this point is freed from Savage's body/mind. Hawkman and Hawkgirl then beat the ever-loving crap out of Savage's body, and only stop once Dick Grayson urges them to escape the crumbling bunker. As everyone is trying to leave the bunker, Joseph sees his poor excuse of a father trying to escape, and then he possesses Deathstroke, keeping him in the bunker, and urging Rose to escape with the Titans from his father's mouth. Joseph, using his father's body, then holds down Vandal Savage and keeps the Matrix on him as they are all buried in a rocky grave. Our heroes who had just lost their powers are shocked to hear that their abilities are not going to be coming back anytime soon. Ronnie and Dr. Stein would put a theory together that after their powers were stripped into Savage, who had then died with the Firestorm Matrix still attached to him, means that all the heroes' powers were lost with Vandal Savage. Perhaps Starfire may regain her abilities since they came from her biology and being alien, but like Beast Boy, Static, Frost, Darla, since their abilities were either developed, inherited, or came from a non-natural source, it's unlikely they would ever regain their abilities. In the post-credit scenes, we see Raven awaking in the middle of the night, having her empathic powers warn her of an upcoming danger. She sees visions of Black Diamond being broken to 1,000 shards, and the face inside with an eclipse. Continuing on, Birds of Prey. We see shots and flashbacks of a massacre of a family. Everything is hazy and difficult to track as we see many people getting mowed down in their own home. Shortly after, we are then brought to the present and to Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, working a solo patrol with Barbara Gordon, working comms as Oracle. A call comes in over the police scanner that Officer Montoya has reported gunfire and arrow fire from masked villains in Chinatown. Batgirl heads down and is able to catch the tail end of the fight. She gathers as much info as possible from Officer Renee Montoya and sneaks an arrow off the crime scene. The arrow is too short for a normal bow, so it was likely a crossbow arrow. Cassandra, with the help of Babs, tracks down one of the parties from the fight moving towards Starling City. While in Starling City, Cass receives word of a break-in at a local police captain's house. Rushing to the address, Cass spots a masked female in black and dark purple with 2 small crossbows attached to the thighs. Cass engages the vigilante in battle, and the two fight for some time. The mysterious criminal attempting to run away, though not fast enough for Batgirl, who stays right on her heels. Shortly after the mysterious woman tries to escape, a loud wail comes on both of the combatants. In comes Black Canary, putting a firm stop to the fight and interrogates both the vigilantes. The mysterious woman identifies herself as Huntress, or Helena Bertinelli, and that these two are only getting in her way of her mission. That she isn't doing everything without a clear purpose, a personal vendetta to kill the monsters responsible for the death of her family. Dinah shares her identity as the Black Canary, working commonly with the Green Arrow, keeping Oliver's identity secret for the time being. Cass then shares her identity, but only because Dinah had demasked her during the interrogations. She still refuses for the two of them to be able to meet in the Batcave, as that is for Justice League members and those who are working with the Batman specifically. This will be followed up by a quick quip by Dinah about the Batman being too young and should still be Robin. Cass would literally slap sense into her and stand up for her Bat members' honor in this moment. After sharing the information she had received/stolen from the police captain's house, which were reports of her family's massacre, an image is taken of a woman in a cat's mask. That's the Lynx, Cass would share with the group. She's been seen working in the Penguin in Gotham, newcomer to the city like me. Helena would then believe that it must have been the Penguin's men who had murdered her family all those years ago in the massacre. The next portion of the movie would see the trio return to Gotham and sneak into the Iceberg Lounge. They are waiting outside the Penguin's office when they hear word of him waiting on news from his new hired hand. After the three feels as if they've heard enough, they fly into the Penguin's office and the four birds begin their song. Cass keeping to the ceiling, though, as hidden cover while Huntress and Dinah do most of the talking. The Penguin, of course, is bluffing throughout the entire scene about knowing anything about this mysterious Lynx and claims to be as much of a victim as Huntress is. Huntress notices a suspicious figure outside the grand window behind the Penguin's desk and pulls the crossbow on the Penguin's head. Instantly, not only do Penguin's guards break in and the massive window shatters, and revealed on the desk is the Lynx, armed with throwing knives, twin katanas, among other blades. Dinah keeps most of the Penguin's guard away with her canary cry, Huntress fights the Lynx, and Cass looks to keep the Penguin from retreating into his safe room while keeping the room under a cloud of smoke. The fight ends with the Lynx escaping while giving each of the heroes plenty of cuts. Penguin's guards are incapacitated, and the Penguin is captured and honestly now interrogated. Helena would be shocked to learn that although the Lynx was working for the Penguin, that he was not behind the family's murder. He would have remembered the incident on the news. He was in a mob war against the Falcons when it was stopped by Batman. Babs would happily come in on the comms to Cass. Lies! That was me and Jason! Damn him! Cass would relay the truth from her comms. You mean Batgirl and Robin. Batman was out of town, conveniently. This is actually referencing the Batgirl and Robin miniseries from the very beginning of Phase 2. Penguin would be visibly frustrated with Cassandra after her correction. The real target you want is King Snake. Penguin outs, and he wouldn't know much more than that. Only that he was based in China and has numbers in Europe, mostly Italy. Though this is all he knew. While he did give up someone who may know more who died years ago. The Joker. Perhaps Mr. J shared some info with one who called him Puddin'. Their research then, of course, would take them to Arkham, where they tried to meet with Dr. Harleen Quinzel, as she has been going by since the death of the Joker by Superman during Darkseid's war. She has genuinely tried to reform, serving her sentence at Arkham Asylum while also providing the therapists and doctors with her services, exchanging her time/work for a more pleasant stay. They ask her for any info on King Snake. At the mention of the name, Harley faintly shows signs of her old insanity before gathering herself. Yes, Joker and I used to know of him. She would then share that he did have the order to kill the Bertinelli family all those years ago. He was expanding his reach and they wouldn't be bought, so they were taken out. I'm sorry for what it's worth for me, Harley would apologize through a tear in her eye. He's in Gotham, the King Snake, Babs would call to the team. Cass would then extend an offer to Harley. Would you like to have a moment of closure? Help us, and that may further reduce your sentence. Harley would again start giggling, though would try to restrain herself. I would fall into a slippery slope if I lose my chance at an emotional and mental sobriety from that part of my life. Every fiber of my being wants to, but I'm off the meds for the first time, and I want to put this life behind me. The trio would leave and thank Harleen for her help before beginning the climax against King Snake and the Lynx. Turns out King Snake is blind, though far from a slack of a fighter. The five would fight on the streets of Gotham for a portion of the fight, then move on to a nearby rooftop. Lynx is defeated when she is incapacitated and rendered unconscious by Black Canary's Canary Cry, though shortly after Dinah's throat is then stunted by King Snake as she would try to wind up another cry, this muting her. As he did this, Helena shoots arrows into King Snake's spine, causing him to keel over onto the ground. Out of arrows, she picks up Batgirl's grappling gun and points it at his forehead, and with the words of mercy in her ears, spares her family's murderer's life. Though, as Helena nears the edge, King Snake lunges at her. She leaps off, grapples to a nearby wall, leaving the mob boss to fall to his death, with her still hanging on the nearby wall. The team the next morning would send Lynx to prison for her crimes and keep an eye on the power vacuum that would be left behind after King Snake's death. It's inevitable, but someone would eventually take that spot. The three exchange their love and Cass invites them back to the Batcave, where they're able to meet their virtual eyes in the sky, Barbara Gordon. The original Batgirl, now Oracle, and she shares her tales of working with the Batman and then Robin, now Red Hood, until she was paralyzed by the Joker. The heroes enjoy each other's company and are welcomed in the Batcave for any needs that may come of them at any time. In the post-credit scenes, Batman would meet Harley in Arkham Asylum. She would tell the new young hero and her old nemesis's cowl to please leave her alone in her recovery, as one Batman was enough for one lifetime. Batman, again this is Tim we're talking here, would then oblige, leaving the room silently after she then turns and bumps into a familiar foe once again. Batman as she remembers him. Matsy? She would involuntarily chuckle before catching herself. What else did you know of King Snake? Batgirl told me you helped her. There was more, wasn't there? Yes, Harleen would reply. Batsy, he was the father of Bane. I'm sorry for the news. I give it out of retroactive respect for the work that you did, not only for Gotham, but for the world. Batman, and again, now this is Bruce, would visibly tense at the mention of the man who broke him. Thank you, Harleen. I'm glad we can be peaceful in this new life. Always believed in you from the beginning. Hope your recovery continues well. And I want to make it noted here that Bruce is wearing a prototype prosthesis on his lower body, similar to what Rhodey wears in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that allows him to stand and walk, but it's nowhere near enough for him to properly return to crime fighting. So he's like in the full bat suit. He's probably not filling it out like he used to. He's probably, lost a lot of muscle, but he is in the bat suit. He is walking enough and is able to stand for short periods of time with this prosthesis. Closing out our penultimate year of the fanfiction, part 1 of the finale, Justice League Damnation. We see reports of increased violence as Batman, Tim Drake, and Robin, Damian Wayne, are fighting criminals across Gotham City. After one of these relatively unusual cases, a man who was beating up an innocent victim suddenly gasps in horror in the actions that he had taken and begs forgiveness from the victim and from Batman and Robin. Batman notices a crystal in the man's pocket and confiscates it for investigation. Back at the Batcave, Tim and Damian are joined by Cassandra Cain's Batgirl, Dick Grayson's Nightwing, Jason Todd's Red Hood, Barbara Gordon's Oracle, and of course, Bruce Wayne. Tim starts shaking his head almost as if shaking away at disturbing thoughts. And after members of the Bat family ask if anything is wrong, Tim uncharacteristically attacks Bruce. Stepping in just in time to stop the attack is Jason, who takes the beating, killing him. As the light leaves Jason's eyes, Tim comes to in a shock of his actions and throws the crystal away from him and passes out from the shock. Here is where we would get the title card for Justice League Damnation. An emergency meeting is called by all members of the Justice League and its affiliated teams to the Watchtower on what is to be done with Tim Drake after his actions against Jason and Bruce. Tim is later asked how or why he would even have done this, and solemnly he responds that he can only guess it was from the crystal that he had pulled off that Gotham citizen just earlier that evening. Kent Nelson, Dr. Fate, then inspects the crystal from a distance, and Artemis and Bizarro look on with each other in silence at the corpse of their friend and team leader for the first time. Martian Manhunter then alerts the team to news on the reports of a humanoid creature causing massive amounts of devastation. As much as Tim's actions need consequences, those may need to wait until the new threat is dealt with. The League sends a group of themselves to deal with this new threat, and the rest stay in the Watchtower. This team is Green Arrow, Black Canary, John Stewart's Green Lantern, Wally West's Flash, Jackson Hyde's Aquaman, Raven, Dr. Fate, Zatanna Zatara, and Donna Troy. They try to deal with this being. It is a humanoid male who has red skin and eyes with a fire to them no well-minded individual would have. When the humanoid turns and looks at Fate, he seems to almost recognize him and springs onto the team of heroes. Kent Nelson is suddenly bombarded with visions of a past avatar of Naboo doing battle with this being clad in green and white, when this being in red now utters, "Ah, remember them, aren't you? Our past. Tell me where the new one is." The remaining heroes begin to retreat after they realize they do nearly no damage to this being. And during the retreat, the red villain throws similar shards of the crystal that Tim had found earlier at specifically Oliver, Dinah, John, Wally, Jackson, and Donna. Back in the Watchtower, Dr. Fate, more specifically the actual spirit of Naboo, relays who that was and who he was referring to. The being himself was called Asbidus, and he was referring to the spirit of vengeance, the Spectre, though this was during the days of ancient Egypt, specifically during the plagues of Egypt, when this was all happening in the visions. Ronnie Raymond would reply, like, the 40 days of darkness, water becoming blood, locusts, all of that was him? The answer to Ronnie's questions, oddly, was both yes and no. The human who then became Asmodus was behind those events, but as the Spectre himself is a metaphysical representation of vengeance, so he, in a lot of ways, is judge, jury, and in the wrong hands, executioner if needs be. Though the spirit of the Spectre needs a host to enact its will. Bruce asks Naboo if he knows anything about the crystals. Naboo replies uncertain, but from what he knows, they come from a being even more ancient than himself, Eclipso. There are ancient stories long forgotten that mention a crystal that held Eclipso prisoner. Eclipso was the embodiment of God's wrath before he was then replaced by the Spectre, as he was too violent. As for Asmodus, he is simply a human bound to a demon from hell, literally. Throughout the next section of this movie, we see Oliver, Dinah, John, Wally, Jackson, and Donna start acting more like Tim did as they stay in contact with their crystals unknowingly. The hero's new goal, stop Asmodus from his rampage on Earth, and learn whatever they can about this specter and find out what they can about these crystals. We will also be close to the climax of the movie when the Spectre is revealed and he and Asmodeus' battle begins. The battle will mostly be Spectre versus Asmodeus versus the Justice League, so 3 parties / 3 sides. This battle is concluded when the Spectre downs Asmodeus for good. Alive, but down. Asmodeus had also hurt Spectre enough to the point where the spirit actually disappears, leaving a human body behind unconscious before Asmodeus hits the ground. But it is far from a happy ending. Many of the heroes had finished the battles writhing on the ground in horrible pain, and they are suddenly all calmed simultaneously. They stand up, revealing their eyes had gone dark with purple irises, and parts of their faces actually had the shape of an eclipse on them. Of course, these being Oliver, Dinah, Jon Stewart, Wally West, Jackson Hyde, and Donna Troy. Wally then runs to Tim and forces a crystal on him, and then suddenly has the same pain, eyes, and eclipse on his face. Supergirl, Superboy, Martian Manhunter, Impulse, and Dr. Fate did all their best work to gather as many of the remaining heroes as they could before they were all put under whatever control this was. They were all able to save everybody, including the body left behind by the Spectre, aside from Cassandra Cain, Jessica Cruz, Helena Bertinelli, Jaime Reyes, and Freddie Freeman's Shazam. All of them are now under this control. As all of the corrupted heroes examine each other and look upon the body of Asmodeus, they walk up to the villain, heaving breaths and in and out, and as his tone shifts. No, what about me? I thought we were both getting our revenge on him. The corrupted respond, unified, as if speaking with a single voice. You thought wrong. Then they all attack the maimed villain as the screen cuts to black. In the post-credit scenes, we see a town swiftly becoming corrupted by the crystals and the citizens gaining the eclipsed possession when we see a temporal portal that we've seen before. This is Rip Hunter's time machine that was last seen being used by Booster Gold. To open up the final year of the fanfiction, Booster Gold's mini-series. And this will sort of be a part 2, not really, of the finale. It is going to help fill in where Booster Gold has been throughout this finale. And it's going to also serve as a sort of recap episode, if you will, across this entire 27-year fanfiction. We would see Booster Gold going throughout events in history of the DCEU. Booster is now working with Rip Hunter, who is secretly Booster's son, to stop Black Beetle, who is trying to change events from the past. Booster's goal is to keep the status quo and prevent changes to the timeline. So this will actually be very similar to like What If in the MCU and Loki with like the whole sacred timeline thing, where Booster in this show, in this miniseries, his entire goal is to keep what happens in the past happening. Black Beetle will have himself and many of his minions and partners trying to affect things that happened in the past. But it's Booster's job to make sure things happen the way they're supposed to. The story climaxes with Booster and company saving Ted Kord from the villains of the show so they can bring him back to Jenny in the timeline. Rip Hunter is initially hesitant to allow Booster to save Ted, though he is convinced to help him once he sees Jenny's pain and sympathetically allows the rescue mission, which is then where he reveals to Booster that he, Rip Hunter, is Booster's son. He was initially taken by them for initiation when Jenny was a child, when he went missing all those years ago. But when he refused to join them, they kept him locked up in their lair until he changed his mind. Booster finds this out during the end of an episode, allowing for a 2 to 3 part episode finale. During the majority of the show, he is the greatest hero you've never heard of because he is going to all these different points in the timeline of the fanfiction, but he cannot stay too long or has to stay so covert, so he doesn't get any praise and actually keeps everything secretly moving the way it should. So each episode would be like a different point in the universe where something might have happened a little too conveniently. So a short list of examples of what I have would be things like getting Hawkman and Hawkgirl to the museum where Batman, Superman, and the Flash would find them in Justice League Eternal, helping setting up Carol Ferris to meet Hal Jordan in the Barr in Green Lantern Rage, helps reveal Amanda Waller to be a White Lantern in Suicide Squad 2. When Zatanna and Constantine during the Hellblazer movie are split up, he talks to Constantine and tries to motivate him to be better for Zatanna while he is drunk in a pub. He helps Victor Stone's Cyborg with moving on from an abusive father. They have similar backstories with bad fathers and being on the football stars for the Gotham City University. He helps Billy Batson and the Marvel family honor Mary after her death to Black Adam, since he lost his sister who was always looking out for him. And then also maybe he tips off Starfire in events that are happening in Bloodhaven so she'd run into Dick Grayson to rejoin the Titans. And of course the climax being saving Ted Kord's Blue Beetle from the Time Stealers and bringing him back to the main timeline. The post-credits would be Ted Kord is brought back to that correct temporal zip code, as I've mentioned earlier. And this is with Booster Gold, which is the present day, and we see Asmodeus on the news battling the heroes and reports of people and heroes acting uncharacteristically evil. And to close the fanfiction, the final project, Justice League Revelations. The Justice League had retreated to an old reliable safe house, Bruce Wayne's lake house, site of their final duel with Darkseid many years ago. The League is licking their wounds and brainstorming a plan of action after many of their members were seemingly possessed by mystical crystals. Mystical crystals. The members present are Supergirl, Superboy, Raven, Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner and Simon Baz's Green Lanterns, Starfire, Nightwing, Damian Wayne, Red Tornado, Deadman, Bizarro, Artemis, Martian Manhunter, Dr. Fate, Constantine, Zatanna, Impulse, Firestorm, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Bruce Wayne. The last individual here is a mystery left behind by the Spectre, a middle-aged man who is unconscious at the start of this scene, but wakes up towards the end. We pick back up then with Booster Gold and Ted Kord after they have come back to the present and are trying to figure out what the hell is going on. There is a newscast that is running over the events of the last movie and telling people to stay indoors and away from anyone with an eclipse on their face, and to avoid these black crystals. All the while, the anchor is then jumped and transformed into a minion of Eclipso in front of the camera for Booster and Ted to see. Alright, what should we do, Mr. Obsessed with Superheroes from my generation? Ted would jest and Booster would aptly respond, safe house. They have to have some safe houses. We'd have to try them all. There's no knowing which one they'd be at. Back at the lake house, the League would question this mysterious man, starting off with basic questions. Who are you, and what do you know of the Spectre? Where did the Spectre go, and so on. I am Jim Corrigan. I was a police officer in Gotham City before I was murdered by the mob. Bruce Wayne accuses the man of lying. Not only was he alive right now, but no officer in Gotham had been killed by the mob specifically since he had started his patrols as Batman nearly 40 years ago. For those who don't know, my timeline for Batman is that this movie takes place in 2040 or 2039, in that realm. And Batman would have started like in 2005. So nearly 40 years. I was a cop in the 1940s. Put me in a barrel of cement and dropped me off in the harbor. My soul was granted to return to Earth, but under the condition that I serve as the spirit of vengeance. The Spectre. Honestly, still wondering if it was worth it. As Corrigan finishes his tale, Booster and Ted fall through the ceiling trying to be stealthy, and they are immediately grabbed by Superboy and Supergirl and examined and interrogated for what they may know. Constantine recognizes Booster as the man many years ago who helped me pull my head out of my ass and started working with Zatanna again, referencing again Hellblazers in Phase 3. Starfire, although still redeveloping her powers after Vandal Savage's attack, also chimes in and says that he helped her find Dick Grayson and then helped reform the Titans. Deadman possesses him to see what he can figure out about him, and Jean, Martian Manhunter, also reads his mind, relaying to the group that he has also helped out everyone in so many ways where they should never have succeeded otherwise. They ask the two their names, and they respond, my name's Ted Kord, or Blue Beetle, and I'm Michael Carter, or Booster Gold. Zatanna would put perfectly, Booster Gold, you are the greatest hero that we have never heard of. There is also an explanation for how Ted and Jaime are both Blue Beetles, but different at the same time. Corrigan then returns to his story that he doesn't know how to reconnect with the Spectre, and frankly, isn't too motivated to want to start anytime soon. He is then shocked to see an ethereal individual, a spooky someone, a phantom stranger, perhaps, come into the lake house. Now you've all done it, he shouts. The phantom stranger, whose members of the JLD have already become acquainted with, introduces himself unsatisfyingly. He then gives a history lesson on the Spectre, Asmodeus, and finally Eclipso, going all the way back to the Old and New Testaments with accuracy that seems like first-hand eyewitness testimony. Reminder, Phantom Stranger in the comics has many options for his backstory, all of them simultaneously existing and not existing. It's confusing. One of these I have chosen to be canon for my fanfiction. This is that the Phantom Stranger is Judas from Christianity, and the betrayal of Christ. He is serving 1,000 years as the Phantom Stranger for each piece of silver that he had sold to Jesus to repent for his sins. Eclipso is who you're really battling here. The Spectre would actually be of great help in your quest, the Stranger says while looking straight at Corrigan. The Phantom Stranger tells them something they had already guessed on at this point. The crystals are Eclipso's prison. Once the pieces are brought to one place, Eclipso will reform and be nigh unbeatable. There are two ways that he could be defeated. Since he is an ancient being and is very difficult to defeat, if he can be killed, there are the crystals themselves. They, reassembled, are the Heart of Darkness, the prison where he had been kept for millennia. Broken by Asmodeus, who was promised power alongside Eclipso, the pieces will slowly possess the wielder to then serve Eclipso. And once they are close enough to one another, Eclipso will return to his physical form. They would need to reassemble the heart from the crystals that none of them would be able to touch without then turning into his minions. But it would work if the Heart of Darkness was reformed, or they could find the Spear of Destiny, or Holy Lance, the spear that had pierced the side of Christ during his crucifixion. The Stranger would also have a notable shake in his voice at the mention of Christ. The climax of the movie would come after more scenes of the League having run-ins with Eclipso's puppets, which sadly results in Hawkman and Hawkgirl becoming possessed. The Spear of Destiny turns out to be the one in Vienna. Again, in the real theology, or in real life, there's 3 spears that are in museums throughout the world that are claimed to be the Spear of Destiny. This is real life stuff, not fan fiction, not comics. This is real life stuff. The one that I have chosen for the sake of this fan fiction to be the authentic Spear of Destiny is the one that is located in Vienna in the Imperial Treasury of Hofburg Palace. That is the one that I have chosen for the real Spear of Destiny in this fan fiction, because it is, number one, the most notable. It seems to be the most complete when I looked at pictures of it. And it is actually the same spear that is used as inspiration for the Legends of Tomorrow show, as well as the Constantine movie in 2005 with Keanu Reeves. So I figured it'd be the most entertaining of the choices that are out there in the real world. During the climax, which takes place at that Imperial Treasury at Hofburg Palace in Vienna, the villains and heroes trade wins and losses. The first win of the heroes is Jim Corrigan regains the spirit of the Spectre. The villains win when the pieces of the heart are brought close enough together to reform Eclipso physically. The spear is then buried in the rubble of the museum. However, Eclipso then loses all of his acolytes when the team effort of Impulse, Raven, Guy Gardner, Simon Baz, Green Lanterns, with Impulse shepherding the corrupted into Simon and Guy's grip. Raven then uses her empathic abilities, amplified by John Constantine and Zatanna Zatara, to break the possession on the corrupted heroes. However, this kills Raven, as her empathic abilities are the backbone of this spell. The load was just too great. In a fit of rage, Eclipso kills one of his old acolytes, John Stewart. Eclipso then looks to take over a new host, one for him to personally inhabit, the Spectre himself. As the Spectre is attempting to gather the shards of the Heart of Darkness and reform Eclipso's prison, the vengeful spirit possesses the replacement Spirit of Vengeance. While now a being without any individual rival, Eclipso picks up Bizarro and rips him in half. Red Tornado amplifies his abilities to slow down Eclipso when the vortexes uncover the Spear of Destiny. The staff is then taken up by the nearest to it, Damian Wayne's Robin. Robin then heroically takes up the spear and looks to stab Eclipso in the chest. Damian is violently knocked away into a nearby wall after sticking the spear into Eclipso's chest. Martian Manhunter then uses his telepathy to go into Eclipso and the Spectre's shared mind. While inside, he notices Eclipso and the Spectre battling with a dead Jim Corrigan off to the side. The 3 continue fighting in the mentally fabricated realm, and we, the audience, flash back to the fight in the real world. We see the spear being taken up by a new hand. Dr. Fate takes the spear and drives it directly into Eclipso and Spectre's heart. We see the green lights coming from every pore of the Spirit of Vengeances when they are then placed into the corpse of ordinary Jim Corrigan. While back in the mental battle between Spectre, Eclipso, and Martian Manhunter, Eclipso had successfully choked out the mind of Jean when we see the spear pierce his heart further, confirming the death of the hateful spirit. The remaining heroes, in shock, review their final battlefield, gathering what there is to do next. They look upon the field of dead bodies: John Stewart, Raven, Jim Corrigan, Bizarro, Jean Jones. When they find Damian still lying on the ground, alive, but barely. Tim is the first to run to Damian as fast as his wounded body would allow. followed closely by Bat family members Cassandra Cain and Dick Grayson. Looks like we won, Tim, Damian would say, spitting up blood, calling Tim by his first name, something he has never done for anyone, either referring to them by their relation to him or their surnames. It's a brave move you made, you little asshole, Dick retorts. Just wanted to be like my older brothers. He taught me well. Cassandra then asks if there's anything that could be done. Oliver replies, sadly, no. The world being overrun by Eclipse's madness, it wouldn't be for quite a while until hospitals and other emergency services are honestly up and running again. At least we could say goodbye. She then turns back to Damian with tears in her eyes, and she takes one of his hands, which Damian finds his other hand to hers, and with the final words to everyone around him, he simply ushers, I love you. And lost is the light behind young Robin's eyes. 10 days later. The world is healing from the attack from Eclipso. With many of our heroes gone, the importance of family and love has never been greater. The best parts of humanity are seen amongst the funerals for the fallen. Public memorials for the heroes are erected in respectively appropriate locations, and the Leagues holds private funerals for their fallen friends. Damian Wayne, Raven, Jason Todd, Bizarro, Sean Jones, and Jon Stewart. Although many faces are lost to the moment, they will be remembered not because we'll never see them again, but because they were seen at all. And so here is why the fanfiction is stopping. Here's a few reasons of why I'm stopping it here, other than I said so. Number one, James Gunn's Superman is releasing soon, and since this is a DCEU focused fanfiction, the future of the DCEU is just beginning. I wanted to let this fanfiction be and look forward to the future content put out by Warner Brothers and DC Studios. As much as I love a lot of aspects of the DCEU, I am very optimistic in what James Gunn has been cooking up with Peter Safran and everybody else over at DC Studios. So I'm super excited to look forward to the future and let go of this past with the DCEU. Number two, the fanfiction's next project would be at the earliest, hypothetically 2042, allowing for 1 year after Justice League Revelations to let Saga 2 settle, similar to what I did with Saga 1 to Saga 2 after Justice League Omega going into The Better Tomorrow. This would then be 29 years after the release of the first film, Superman Man of Steel, back in 2013. For reference / context, 29 years ago from right now, which again, I'm recording this in June of 2025, is 1996. In real life, Blade wouldn't release for another 2 years. And the newest, I would say relevant, for lack of better words, superhero movie that was released was Batman Forever with Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, and Jim Carrey. It would be more than okay at this point for a reboot of a cinematic universe, in my personal opinion. I mean, think about it. It's 29 years from the release of Richard Donner's Superman in 1978 to 2007 with the release of Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, and being 1 year removed from Iron Man. It's almost as far away from what my next project would be from my first project as it is from Iron Man, the start of the MCU, from the first modern superhero movie. At that distance is almost identical. I think we're more than due for, another Clark Kent Superman movie or a Bruce Wayne Batman movie, because by this point, I think audiences would be more than happy with a reboot. And then in terms of how I ended the fanfiction, I wanted to end it on a note that wasn't 100% happy, though not nearly like how the universe ends in Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. I didn't want to go that somber. I wanted to shoot for somewhere in between. Although I don't plan to make Saga 3 or Phase 8s or anything in that future, if I did want to follow through and continue working on this like a crazed madman, here are a few things that I would consider doing. If in this list an idea or question that is left unanswered about my universe that you want to have answered, please comment that down below. I will be regularly checking in on the comments on this video as best I can for the foreseeable future, and I will keep a pinned comments on this video that'll be updated periodically with mine and your ideas for the future of this fan fiction, possibly. So In no particular order, I would have Tim Drake retire as Batman shortly after the events of this Saga 2 because of his actions, and he would leave the world of vigilante crime fighting for good. Bruce Wayne, after years of physical therapy and recovery, would try to have his Dark Knight return, though this would ultimately fail. He would then find and recruit a young Terry McGinnis to be the next Batman Beyond. Terry would be introduced similar to how Carrie Kelly was used in the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel, and while Bruce is failing in his attempts to return, Terry would then be the X factor in dealing with the villain of that movie and becoming that next Batman for the foreseeable future. With the Titans mostly being disbanded, the young Teen Titans would grow up into their new versions of their adult mantles. So, for example, John Kent would become the next Superman, working alongside his first cousin once removed, Supergirl. And Bart Allen would eventually graduate from being Impulse, or continue to be Impulse, but be an adult Flash next to his Uncle Wally. I would also look to introduce the Blue Lanterns of Hope and Indigo Tribes of Compassion on another Lantern-focused project, and some other characters that I didn't use in either one of these two sagas that I would have loved to use, just never got around to it, would be characters like Plastic Man, Mr. Terrific, Larfleeze, Godspeed, Sideways, Damage, again, Saint Walker and the Blue Lanterns, as well as the Indigo Tribes of Compassion. Brother Eye would be really fun to do, or Starro the Conqueror. And then one idea I had while just kind of coming up with ideas for this epilogue, if you will, would be perhaps the Saga 3 finale would be similar to the Kingdom Come story, where many newly introduced heroes would lack respect for the heroes in Sagas 1 and 2, and trash their names, becoming the next major villains, and the movies would then focus on educating these young heroes on the sacrifices that the heroes that came before, and where the legacies left behind, and repairing those legacies, and leaving the world better off than it was found. You know, like I said, I wanted to come up with parts of a follow-through, or really come up with a follow-through for the saga, so that way it ends on a note that I am happy with, and there is, you know, a bit of direction afterwards. If there is an idea that you have or a question you have about my universe and how it would continue, please leave it in the comments below. Would love to continue chatting about this, and then depending on our conversations, or depending on ideas or you guys' comments, we'll keep that pinned comment updated so you guys can always check that out. And thank you all so much for watching this video. I have been pouring my heart and soul into this fan fiction for the last 5-6 years plus, and so I'm very happy to close it here, and thank all of you again so much for watching this series. Like I said earlier, I think it'd be really, really fun to go dive into some old drafts in a future video. If you guys are interested in that, again, please comment down below. Other than that, I'm really happy to set this aside and look on to the future of DC content with things like Superman and everything else James Gunn has been cooking up. Simply put, thank you so much again for everybody for watching this series. And if you did make it to the end of this video, you likely watched all the other ones. So you probably like my content, so I do urge you to press that subscribe button, because then you'll be notified of all of my videos whenever they go up. And also, just have a great rest of your day. Thank you.